Alrighty, Jonathan, I'm ready when you are.
Alyssa, we're still about 4 minutes early.
That's right, 6:15.
Okay, I'll play. Hi, Ingrid. Welcome to the game.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
A new face.
Join the ranks.
All right. I think we're 6:15. It is November 5th, 2020. We will call this meeting to order. Catherine, can you conduct roll?
Willman,
Here.
Wusso,
Here.
Cap,
Here.
Godis,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Beth,
Here.
Hershey.
Present.
All right. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, agenda changes and conflicts. Does anybody have any conflicts of interest tonight or agenda changes?
I do. And that is the Oasis Creek rezoning. I will be recusing myself because I heard that on multiple times in just different iterations in the planning and zoning capacity.
Okay, thank you, Ingrid. So I think when that time comes, just as a practical matter, if you want to just mute yourself and step away for a little bit, that probably be about as good as any. Any other agenda changes or conflicts of interest? All right, seeing none, we will go to citizens appearing before council for public comment. If you have called in, the number is *9 to raise your hand. This is a time where you can raise your hand and comment on anything that is not on the agenda. If there's an agenda item, please wait for that item to appear. So I see 16 attendees. Nope. Okay. I will bring it back to City Council for council comments. Of course, Charlie. All right. Go ahead, Charlie. And then Paula.
I want to comment on how good you look tonight, Mr. Mayor, since you give me grief. But seriously, we had a Transportation Commission meeting this week, and then there was an issue that came up about public notices. In that, it was brought to my attention that the Transportation Commission is setting up subcommittees to try to be more efficient in their work, but we as council need to approve that. Those subcommittees they've set up are Mass Alternate Transit Subcommittee, Bike Pedestrian Subcommittee, and Parking Subcommittee. If it's appropriate, Mr. Mayor, I would like to move that we approve the Transportation Commission appointing those subcommittees so that they can move forward.
Deborah, before we have a second, go ahead. You're muted.
I was not at that meeting, and I would just like to understand if that's going to impact staff time, Charlie, because meetings don't usually just happen on their own.
The intent was not to, and Terry Parch, who was at that meeting, said she would endeavor to be there, but it wasn't, the Transportation Commission didn't expect her to be at all those subcommittee meetings. And the idea was allow them to work on some issues to move forward, so our actual Transportation Commission meetings themselves were more efficient. They would certainly keep Terry, who is a staff person to that group, apprised of what's going on, but she would not be required to attend.
And of course, whatever council would like to do is fine. I would just like everyone to remember that we're about to go into the largest infrastructure project the city has done since the wastewater treatment plant, while Terry is also planning for Southbridge, which will then be the largest infrastructure project we've ever done. So just please be considerate of her time.
And the Transportation Commission really does appreciate how much hard work she puts in. She and both Linda, and they really feel it makes their operation more efficient. So I appreciate that, Deborah, and to the level that I or Shelley, who's also council liaison to that group, can do so. We will try to attend ourselves, but we're not going to be able to do that all those meetings either. So.
And I think the purpose of the subgroups were just to have a breakout group without staff or council there. So just 2 or 3 people could kind of advance a topic and bring a recommendation to the larger council. So I actually feel that it would be helpful, because we're going to have to talk about these topics in the next 6 months regardless, and to talk about it in Transportation Commission and schedule special meetings, I think would take more of staff's time. Is that your recollection as well, Charlie or Shelley?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. For instance, we talked about the Blake Gate at our meeting Tuesday. We're talking about the MOVE study. We've had at least 2 meetings of the MOVE study already, and there'll probably be more. And the idea is if we can do this in subcommittee, it's much more efficient use of our volunteers' time as well as staff time.
Right, I agree.
I would second that motion then, Charlie. Go ahead, Deborah.
One last thing, just if they're going to be more than 2 members in the subcommittee, staff will have to run a Zoom. So if you could keep it to where we don't have to do that, that might help actually cut down on staff time. Otherwise, you'll just be adding more to it.
Okay. I
And
think we can
thought
relay
about
that.
that. And thought about that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Charlie. I think Carl said that they had to be publicly noticed. And so we will have to go through a little bit of a process. They'll have to notify me or Sarah, and we'll have to make sure it gets publicly noticed for wherever. And I think that they had the idea that they might try to meet in person somewhere.
But if it's only 2 people, Terry, then it doesn't need to be, correct?
Well, here's the problem, is that your code is pretty broad in that all meetings of your commissions shall be open to the public. I would like that code to be changed if you're going to like all of a sudden start chopping up smaller subcommittees and deciding these don't have to be public and those do. So from where it stands right now, they need to be noticed. And I am actually uncomfortable with the idea that, they're not, right? Like these are public bodies doing public things for you guys, and no, they're not making final decisions, but I think it's a slippery slope to start saying, well, these are open to the public, but those aren't. From a PR standpoint, it's going to be a real nightmare for you guys.
And how does that work, Carl, because they're working on ideas or concepts to bring back to the commission, which will be discussed in a public meeting, and then taken as yay or nay, taken as a recommendation to council.
And I mean, I think what it is that if you want them to be able to do that in private, you need to change the municipal code to clearly state that, because that subcommittee is still a meeting of the Transportation Commission, and under the code, any meeting of a commission or board is to be public.
But under the state sunshine laws, they are not subject to that. So maybe our municipal code is a little too restrictive, allowing our boards to.
Yeah, well, so that your boards wouldn't be subject to the Transportation Commission under state law can be closed to the public.
Right.
It's not a public body.
But that's what I mean, is that maybe our municipal code.
Right. And so what I'm saying is that you guys need to define when they get a step off of being a public meeting. Or if you don't want any of them to be public, I mean, but you guys just need to say that in the code.
Okay.
Right? And I think where you get into this kind of slippery slope is it when it's 2 of them are meeting, or is it when it's 3, or is a subcommittee the entire transportation committee less 1 person? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's all these ways to start gaming the system, and it makes me uncomfortable as soon as boards and commissions start asking for ways to not hold meetings in public.
Right.
A la the arts board.
And I honestly don't think that was their intent. They were trying to make it as easy as they could for staff. I think that was the purpose of.
No, and I understand. It's just a very, it's a very touchy issue about transparency in government.
Right.
So we have a motion and a second to form the subcommittees.
Could you clarify the motion? Because in this discussion, I kind of missed that completely.
Go ahead, Charlie.
That's fine. The motion was to allow 3 subcommittees of the Transportation Commission, 1 for mass/alternate transit, 1 for bike pedestrian issues, and 1 for parking issues.
In open meetings or in?
I didn't have that.
I think that needs to be clarified.
Well, and I think what it is that for right now, my legal opinion as your city attorney is that they have to be public meetings.
Right.
I agree.
Until we change the code.
So I think that's a given right now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think it's as simple as all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I.
No.
Aye.
No.
Tony, is your objection the?
My objection, Mr. Mayor, is that this happens in opening comments. It's now 15 minutes and Charlie introduces these issues without talking to staff. And that's my biggest objection. No.
Okay.
Steve also voted no, I believe.
Steve voted no as well?
I did.
Okay.
I haven't voted, so I'm voting no as well. I just am concerned about some of the things that Carl brought up. And I do understand the need of the Transportation Committee. But I think we need to clarify some things first before we head into doing these things.
Okay. So
I'm saying it a little bit from, on the tourism board, I sometimes think that they discuss their budget in smaller meetings, and it's never really kind of been brought up, and I don't know what other committees do as well. So,
Well, and what your code says is that, and actually the charter says, is that subcommittees shall be approved by council. So obviously I'm not at every meeting to be able to like say, hey, you can't do a subcommittee, but I think we need to be a little bit more formal about if they're doing those things, because the budget is a great example of the kind of thing that is of great interest to the public. And so one-offing it so that it's not in the public, I'm incredibly uncomfortable with.
And the reason I brought it up without any kind of prior notices came up on Tuesday, and Carl's opinion came out, I think, either later Tuesday or yesterday, and they're trying to get going. So I was trying to make sure that we had to properly approve the subcommittees if they're going to exist. If they're not, we should tell the Transportation Commission that. My view is that it makes sense, and until we change the code, if we decide to change the code, they'll have to be public.
Okay. Well, from my count, Ingrid, did you have a yes vote on that?
Was a yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I have it as motion passes 4-3 with Shelley, myself, Charlie, Ingrid with the affirmative, and Steve, Tony, and Paula in the negative.
And may I jump in really quickly and just ask a structure, since this is my first meeting? Historically, my understanding is a motion is made, a second is made, and then it's open for discussion before we vote. Is that how you guys do it?
Yeah, typically, but I guess I just thought there's going to be a slam dunk, and I normally would be more formal in it if it's like a noticed agenda item, as Councilor Hershey mentioned. But I honestly, I just thought it was going to be a slam dunk. So
all good. Thank you. Thanks for double checking.
Yeah. Paula, are you done, Charlie?
Yep.
Okay. Paula, go ahead.
This came up a year ago and I couldn't remember the answer, but AG&C, which I'm the liaison for, passes around parking for veteran signs to different entities in their group, and it landed in the hands of Grady in Newcastle's council, and he just texted me recently and asked if the city of Glenwood would want to be the next recipient. And I vaguely remember a conversation, and this might be a Deborah thing, that we have some parking for veterans, and I just needed to know what the answer was. Is that, I see you nodding your head, so I'm assuming we're good.
We set a couple. We asked some of our larger big box stores to put them in place several years ago, and they did.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that we couldn't have more, but I think we have them in the major stores.
Okay, and it's really a city council question. It wasn't my decision, so that's why I'm bringing it up before all of you. If you wanted to be the guardian of those signs for the next year, again, it's not on our agenda, and it just came to me through a text, so I was trying to get that clear. So that's all I had, and it's Deborah. I can get back with Grady and say that I think we have these in town.
Any other kinds of comments? I will do my my husbandly duty and give a public health warning and plea. I went trick-or-treating with everybody, with my kids, obviously my family, on Saturday night, and ended up at a cul-de-sac at a friend's house. There's a lot of people there. You go in to get a glass of water, and there's people that moved inside because it was cold. People are still having and congregating in groups, and that is a killer. Literally, it's a killer. Our numbers in Garfield County and across the state are spiking. They're through the roof, and it's concerning. We're having some of the highest numbers we've ever had. Please don't let your guard down. It was different in March when we could kind of limp our way to better weather and get outside. It's different going into winter, and I get that. So just please be vigilant. Get your flu shot. And Carrie, I did my duty. My wife works public health. All right. Any other comments? Nope, we're ahead of our schedule. Ingrid, this is your first meeting. You're going to be so impressed by how well we stick to our schedule. All right. All right. Next item, number 8, consent agenda, MOU for traveler service, ordinance 23.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Shelley, seconded by Charlie. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. See, that's how it's supposed to be. All right, item number 9, state opioid settlement presentation. I saw somebody, Jared Rollins. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. Is there anybody else that needs to be promoted to a panelist from this presentation? Okay. There you are. We see you, Jared.
Okay, so my name is Jared Rollins. I'm a local licensed clinical social worker. I thank you for letting me join you tonight. I see your guys' agenda, and so I thank you for letting me go towards the beginning of this, and I will be brief. So like I said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. For a year, I've been working on something we call the community opioid treatment strategy, which really listening to what the community needs as far as drug, opioid specific education, prevention, treatment, and recovery goes. And that has opened the doors to greater opportunities with the state, hearing about what's going on here, different counties, different states across the West. And so one of the individuals I've been introduced to is Heidi Williams, who works with the Attorney General's office. And so she was gracious enough to let me use her PowerPoint. So those are the notes that you guys have. And so I'll go through those quickly and talk about what's going on in the area. So for our discussion, opioids are considered any type of prescription opioids, illicit black market opioids, heroin, and fentanyl. And one of the big issues in our areas, in the Roaring Fork Valley, is the prescription opioids. We have a higher rate in the state of prescribing of high risk opioids compared to other places. And certainly in conjunction with that, there's high rates of methamphetamine use in our region as well. So in the last 10 years, Colorado has lost 5,000 people to opioid overdose. An estimated additional 2,000 people have lost their lives to fentanyl and heroin. So some data just came out a couple months ago that last year in 2019, in Garfield County alone, 10 folks lost their lives to overdose. And we know that, since COVID, since the beginning of all of this, we've already reached 2019 levels, and it's November. So it's dire. It is still a need that we should be aware of in this area. One of the big things is that our state only has around 30% of the total drug treatment capacity that's needed. Through that community opioid treatment strategy, our greatest need is accessibility to treatment. We have treatment programs. They are hard to afford for a lot of folks. And they're not reaching some of the most vulnerable and most in need individuals. And so there's some progress being made on that through different coalitions, the coalition that I'm part of, and the continuum, the recovery continuum that Debbie Wild is also a part of. We're working together on that. Okay, so, and it also talks a little bit about how the criminal justice system is really taking the brunt of that. And in Garfield County, truthfully, the jail system is fairly progressive, and doesn't necessarily reflect these the stats that are on here. And so I think that's something for you guys to know and be proud of in our community. Okay, so the big ask here is that there is a settlement that's moving through the courts. Current proposed settlements with Johnson & Johnson, the Sackler family as well, is happening with the state here. So there's ongoing litigation, and what is possible with municipal support and county support is that the money from the settlement would be doubled if all municipalities and states and counties get on board with the settlement. So that's where you guys come in, is signing on to that, whether it's mayor or city council. That has not been decided yet, but I want you guys to have a heads up that this is going to be happening either by the end of the year or Q1, is how it's projected. And like I said, I saw your guys' agenda. I know you're busy, and so I wanted to give you a heads up that this is coming, and to start thinking about this as a need and how that would go. So some of what it would go towards, again, is that prevention, treatment, and recovery of opioid use, as well as other narcotics involved. Like I said, in Garfield County and Glenwood, there's an increased methamphetamine use, and so those are the things that this settlement could fund. Some of that would go directly to the municipalities, and you guys would decide what to do with it regarding opioid abatement, whether there's a fund that you would like to support or a cause that you would like to support. Another portion would go to the Office of Behavioral Health in their statewide efforts around opioid abatement, and then more would go to the AG's office. So I wanted to kind of prime you guys on that. There's no ask today on that, but I will probably see you again or be contacting some of you at some point to say, hey, this is it's happening. So let's circle the wagons and get something done to support this community and the recovery community in particular. So with that, do you guys have any questions or thoughts? Can try and answer some briefly here.
Charlie, you have a quick question? Charlie, your hand was up. Yes, that'd be you. Charlie, go ahead.
Sorry, I was ready to unmute myself. Jared, thank you for the presentation. We actually got a memo today from David Broadwell, who's the Colorado Municipal League General Counsel, noting that this is going to be coming up, and I think it's going to be important for us to participate in that. Do you know what's going to be required of us to participate? We sign a settlement agreement. Do you know what's going to happen? How it's going to physically operate?
Yeah, so that's still, from my conversations with Heidi, that's still up in the air a little bit. It may be like a memorandum of understanding, some kind of document. I think it's something just for you all to know.
Okay, thanks.
Shelley.
Thank you, Jared. Thanks for bringing this to us. I guess I'm just curious too of when you say the money can be doubled, can you explain about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the way it's been, told to me, obviously I'm not in these settlement discussions, is that say like the settlement specifically with the AG and with these pharmaceutical companies is like 200 million. It would stay at that 200 million if there was not support from municipalities and county representatives. If there is support, it would go to 400 million, and then the amount of money that you got to work with as a municipality would then also double.
God. Okay. Well,
Is that-
great.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that I don't know, but I'd love to hear more about it. So we'll look forward to you coming back as more information is available and finding out how we can get involved. Thank you very much.
And I think, and maybe Charlie, from the CML level, I would be looking for our state's attorney general to guide us and give us direction. If the state signs on to it, then I'm more than happy for this council to sign on. I don't want to support something, though, if the state of Colorado is going to go after its own settlement and work at odds with this larger state goal.
Okay, and that would be part of the education process for us, right?
That's something I think we'd have Carl work with them and come back to us. And Jared, I'd be sure to tell them to work with our city attorney to come up with something. I think, generally speaking, I would certainly support this. So.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Jared, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. It's exciting news.
Yeah, thank you. This was my first city council presentation, so.
Hey, you did great.
You did great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Next, DNR project presentation on the fire mitigation efforts. Who do I need to promote? Tara or Tara. And who else? Anybody else need to be promoted to panelist? Mr. Smith goes to panelist.
Unmute.
See what I just did there? Thank you. Thank you, Tony. I figured you would. All right, go
Hi.
ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, wonderfully. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen, but I guess before I do that, do you want me to go now? Is that? Go?
Yes, please.
So I'm Tara Taffy. I'm with the Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety, Inactive Mine Reclamation Program. I spoke with you guys the last time in March, right before, the world changed. So it's good to see you all back. I have a quick presentation just to give you an update on the work that we did out at South Canyon this summer. And then we also I have a video, and I'm not sure if you guys had received that or not. I sent it to Brian.
Yeah, I have it loaded up, Tara.
Okay, great. I'm in a hotel this evening, and so I don't have great internet. So I'm hoping that he'll be able to play it for you guys. We did a video, like a 5-minute video, just to kind of highlight some of the work. We interviewed Dan Rober from the city and some other local folks, and it's for us as much as it is for you guys. I'm happy to share it with you. You can use it for whatever you want. But we have a big legislative push coming relatively soon, and so it was just sort of a video to highlight some of the work that we do with our federal funding, and so you'll see that in video as well. But first, I'm going to go through the project. So before I start, does anybody have any questions? Okay. Yeah. Anybody?
You're great.
Okay. I'm not super great with Zoom. I'm used to using Google Meet, so it might take me a second to get my video up, or to get my presentation up. Let me. Oops. Okay. Can you guys see that? Okay, great. So like I said, I'm here to discuss the mitigation work that we did at the South Canyon Mine Fire this summer. Some of these slides are repeats from the last time, just in case there's anybody new watching, to remind you where things are. South Canyon Mine Fires, there's the east and the west fire. They are located right south of the landfill, about 5 or 6 miles from the actual city of Glenwood. And this summer, we actually worked on the South Canyon East fire. But both South Canyon West and South Canyon East are our number 1 and number 2 priority underground mine fires in the state. Just the location, being the proximity so close to Glenwood Springs, and the the history of the mine fire from the 2002 coal seam fire. These sites are a high priority to us, and we're really trying to impart some good work out there to try and mitigate the chance for another wildfire from these underground mine fires. So it's just a little bit closer, and I think I have a pointer. I don't know how to use the pointer. Maybe you guys, can you see my cursor?
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
a great pointer.
All right. I know there's a pointer, but I don't know how to find it. So anyways, so we worked over on this side of the canyon. And so the project objectives were to limit the flow of oxygen into the actual mine fire. As the mine burns, it collapses, it creates subsidence on the surface, which creates fractures in the rock below the surface, and those fractures inhale air into the mine fire. And the more air that gets into the mine fire, the faster and hotter it burns. And I'll use this analogy again, but ask you to think of it like a campfire. And when you have a campfire that is really kind of struggling to burn, it's smoking like crazy, and it's a mess. And then when it's not smoke, the more air that comes in, the more efficient that burn is, the less smoke and off-gassing you get. So the South Canyon fire is a pretty efficient burn. We see surface temperatures of over 1,000 degrees on the surface. And so the goal of this soil seal was kind of block off the oxygen. So we graded, we looked at, the plan was to grade the whole site, use a geogrid and clay and soil, and then just to revegetate the area. We had identified a nice borrow area, and then the plan was to use compost from the landfill to finish up the re-veg. And so that was the plan. And then I'm going to go through now sort of what we ended up actually doing. So these are just a couple of the drawings. This is about a 3.5, 4 acre grading area. The road comes up that you can see from the canyon. The road kind of goes along through the edge of this and then around the top. And our borrow area was down to the south, and this was the borrow area. So the borrow area was directly south of the actual mine fire area. And just for a little bit of clarification, I think there was a little bit of confusion this summer. We were not actually working in the active fire area. We were working below the active fire area. It's not safe to put equipment in the area that is where the ground's really hot. It's unstable. So we were actually working below it, where we've had a bunch of subsidences that were pulling air into the fire. And so we bid our project in fall of 2018. So it was a long time coming. We awarded to Reams Construction, and we had delays. Sorry, dog sitting issues. We had some issues with our cultural resources surveys, and we had to redo those surveys. And so we got pushed back a year. And so we thought we'd start in April of this year. It took a little while to get the snow out of there. And then also there was some significant concerns about elk calving from the members of the local community. And so we decided to just wait until after the beginning of June to get started out there. And we thought the project would take about 90 days, and our winning bid was about $404,000. And then we did have plans to put some additional signage up on the west side of the fire, where the mountain bike trail kind of goes along the bottom of the fire. And so we actually mobilized on June 12th, and we were complete with all of our earth moving activities on August 8th. So the project went pretty quickly. It went very smoothly. We had approximately 4.5 acres that we graded, the large subsidences, and then covered with the soil seal. That soil seal included a 12-inch clay cover that was compacted onto the site. I apologize, we graded, we put the geogrid down and then compacted 12 inches of clay over top of that. And then another 3 to 4 feet of soil compacted over top of that. And then we built several drainages around to divert surface water and stormwater runoff away from the reclaimed area. And then we revegetated the site. We included a fertilizer, some wood straw mulch, and straw wattles. The wattles are there just to help with the erosion until we get vegetation growing on the site. And the wood straw is also sort of the same thing. It helps, it doesn't blow around in the wind the way regular straw does. And so we decided to use that rather than regular straw just because of the nature of the fire at that site. So I just have some photos of the construction, and you're more than welcome to raise your hand or whatever you have to do, but you can ask questions while I'm giving this presentation. So this is standing sort of at the upper end of the excavation area. You can see it kind of how large the graded area is. And this is actually at the bottom now looking up. This is the surface expression of the fire up towards the top of the hill. And then just at the top of this bench, the actual outcrop is burning as well. So here we've graded the site and laid our foot of clay, and it's all been compacted. And then this is actually the installation of the geogrid with the geotextile over top of it. The purpose of the geogrid is if we get some movement, like if there's another subsidence in the mine or something that happens that the ground moves, the geogrid will help kind of stabilize the surface and not allow that material to kind of crack and reopen those fractures. And it just gives it a little bit more of a plastic, like a physical property of like a sheet of plastic instead of something brittle. Here's kind of an aerial shot of it. This is actually, we worked from the bottom up. And so this is nearing the top of the geogrid. And then if you look where my cursor is, we actually unearthed a pretty sizable tunnel, mine tunnel, while we were in there. We did a few little investigative things to see if that was inhaling a bunch of air, because we just assumed that it was. It actually wasn't, because it's collapsed. It was collapsed about 30 feet in or 25 feet in. But it was interesting to find that nevertheless. You could see the actual like little pick marks on the ceiling from when they had excavated it out. And so after we got everything down, we got our soil application. We have our channels and check dams. So we constructed two channels around the site and actually imported this rock to create these check dams along the edges. so that we don't have a lot of erosion. We were pretty lucky because we got to test the site. Like the one time it rained this summer, we had that torrential downpour, and I think it was like the first week of August. Maybe the only time it rained all summer. But the contractors were still on site, and we had very, very heavy rain, and all of this kind of held up, and so we were pretty pleased with that. Here's just an overview, another aerial shot from, this is where we were working. This is our water truck, and we had scrapers and 2 scrapers, 2 dozers, and an excavator all working at the same time. And then our borrow area just to the south of the main reclamation area. We cleared and grubbed all the oak brush out of there and then used it as a surface application towards when we were doing the revegetation. And oak brush grows so fast, it was already starting to leaf up and green when I was out there at the end of September. So pretty pleased and that borrow area will be revegetated in no time. You can see all our slash that we have kind of laid down in there. I didn't actually have, for whatever reason, I couldn't find it on my phone today, but there are actually wattles across this as well, and some erosion control items in the borrow area. I just don't have a photo of it. And then my last trip during construction this year was during the revegetation effort. And I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with what was going on August 14th. But we had to, we sent our crews home that day because the smoke came into South Canyon so thick that it was pretty unhealthy for them to be doing all this work by hand. I mean, they were hand carrying the wattles up and down the hills, and the smoke was just so terrible that day. We sent them home, and I think it was a few weeks before they were able to get back in there and finish up that work. But you can see the wattles and some of the straw, the wood straw. We didn't lay wood straw in the area of my cursor. We have a little bit of a hot spot right up in this grassy area. There's not grass on the hot spot, but because of that, I just had them not lay straw in the one area. But we did lay straw in the rest of it because it's not hot. And for clarification, the area where we were doing revegetation wasn't hot either. I figured one less thing up there. It was so dry and the fire was going, it seemed like a prudent thing to do. Next year, I have some plans for that, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We did have some challenges. There are some very naughty bears in South Canyon. So they really liked all of our stuff, and I'm not really sure that they ate the fertilizer as much as they played volleyball with it, because the bags were just ripped open, but all the fertilizer was there. They were kind of strewn across. So we're pretty sure this was the bad bear, and it's a very large bear actually. There's some footprints in the mud. Our final project cost was $411,361.92. We did have a little bit of a change order for some of the, we had to purchase a little bit of extra sediment fence, the S fence that we used, and then also we ended up having our contractor buy the seed. The construction was completed by Reams, re-veg by Horizon Environmental. Project oversight was done by Tetra Tech and DRMS. We began monitoring the site immediately. We've had no erosion issues to date, though we haven't had much rain, so it hasn't, other than that one storm, it hasn't really been tested much. And then I did enter into a contract with Horizon, and I think they might be out there today. They might have been out there today, but they'll be out there in the next few days, laying something called NutriFix. And this is a newly developed fertilizer that is showing excellent success in inhibiting cheatgrass and other noxious weed growth, and encouraging native grass establishment. And so I'm kind of using South Canyon as a test site for this. The teak grass is just so flammable. And so if we could have native grasses rather than cheatgrass out there, I think it would make a big difference in just protecting that area a little bit better. And so we're going to see how this does. It supposedly is, it will also limit the growth of some of the other noxious weeds. And one of the big ones we have problems out there with is the musk thistle and Scotch thistle. And so I'm hoping that we see some improvement with those as well. Let's see. So future work, the Nutrifix application is going on right now. Next spring, I would like to do some rock armoring at the base of that hotspot down into the re-veg area. So I kind of pointed out that little hotspot that in this picture would be like kind of right off the page. So I'd like to import some bigger rock and just have a nice rock armor so that if we do get some movement from that area, like a little hot rock coming down or something, or it doesn't have anything to burn. And then we're moving into the next phase for South Canyon East, which is trying to determine what we can do for a physical barrier to keep the fire from moving. And then, so we're looking at maybe a grout curtain or something like that. The fire is definitely moving to the south. Now we believe there's all 4 coal seams are involved. And additionally, we would like to begin discussing with the city of Glenwood an access plan for South Canyon West, and then develop a mitigation strategy for over there. And then just continue to monitor the site and manage the site for surface fire danger. That's the end of my presentation. Let's see if I can figure out how to, well, I'll leave it open just in case there's questions.
And Tara, I think just because we have a pretty packed agenda, if you have that video, I think you mentioned earlier, if you want to send us a link to that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I will do that. I would just have Brian, I'll just have him send it. He has the link. You guys can watch it another time. We don't need to rehash everything we just discussed. So I just wasn't sure how long my presentation would be. So I was like 20 minutes. But I'm happy to take questions, and I can get this presentation sent over to you guys as well.
That'd be great. Shelley, Paula, and Ingrid. Go ahead, Shelley.
Hi, Tara. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It's really great to see this work get done, and I think anything we can do, or you all can do, to help us prevent having a repeat of 2002 is greatly appreciated. I'm wondering, with the work that was done and the overlay and everything from this summer, are you guys monitoring the success of that, or do you have monitors set up that measure kind of the airflow into the seam? And do you have any idea of how successful it was?
Yeah, so yes, thank you for asking that question, because I meant to say something and I didn't. We do have we still have some temperature monitors on site in old boreholes that we are watching. I haven't actually seen those data yet. Some sort of anecdotal data that I wanted to revisit with the fire, with the what do you call it? Campfire analogy. The site is smoking like crazy. So as soon as we got that surface seal kind of sealed up and we got our soil down, the site just started to smoke and smoke and smoke. And frankly, I know it stinks that that's happening, like literally and figuratively, but it's amazing because it means that we've made some progress in slowing down how much air is going into the fire, and the fire is really kind of choking right now. And so we're really pleased with that.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you.
And next time I come to you, I will have more data. So.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Sure.
Paula, go ahead.
Tara, that was great. Thank you. Can you remind me, I just don't remember, is this covered by the city of Glenwood or is the Bureau of Reclamation part of this? When you mentioned the $411,000 on this particular project.
Sure. There's it's federal funding from the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement as Title IV of the Surface Mine Reclamation and Control Act.
Okay.
So it's 100% federally funded.
Great.
Through the state of Colorado.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ingrid.
My question was just following Shelley's, and that is, how long are you going to be monitoring the site?
As long as we have the ability to monitor the site.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, we've been keeping an eye on it since 2002 pretty frequently. I know we had spent time there before, but I mean, I monitor the site multiple times a summer. On dry years, we're out there almost at least once a month, sometimes every other week, just making sure that, you know, nothing's changing in a way that could start a fire. We can't guarantee that there's not going to be a fire from this, but you know, the best we can do is keep an eye on it and, you know, and try and keep the vegetation away from those vents.
Great. Okay. And then one last question for me was just the Nutrifix. Are there any environmental concerns? Like what exactly, can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. So it's actually, it's a fertilizer that was developed from a colleague of mine up in Montana. It is not an herbicide and it is not a inorganic fertilizer. It's just trace elements. So it's 100% environmentally friendly. I can get you the, I'm happy to send the sheet for it. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but yeah, there's no concerns with water runoff or anything like that. It's literally like trace metals, trace elements that you add. And the way they developed it was working on some mine impacted lands up in Montana and realizing that when they would go in and do their monitoring, their vegetation monitoring, there was no cheatgrass in any of their vegetation plots, revegetation plots, but in the native ground right next to it, there would be. And so they started kind of teasing out what was in the soils that were having successful native plant vegetation and what was the difference with the natives. And it's some trace, just some trace elements.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really cool. I'm hoping it works. We're going to test it here and at the Axial Coal Mine Fire up on Kalawayo, at the Kalawayo mine. So
great. Yeah. Thank you so much. I enjoyed when I was out there riding bikes. I enjoyed watching the progress.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah, awesome. It was encouraging.
Yeah, right. Any other questions? Comments? Tara, Brian, thank you very much. We really appreciate the near $500,000 of resources brought to the community for helping this. You know, obviously, coal seam was a really big deal, and I remember getting this presentation probably 2+ years ago about all the bentonite and all the other crazy stuff you were doing out there, and I'm really encouraged that it seems to be working or helping.
Yeah, well, it's a step in the right direction. And I would like to just give a shout out to Brian and his staff for all of their support while we were out there working this summer. It was really helpful. So thank you so much to the City of Glenwood as well for being a great partner.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Tara. Have a good evening.
Thank you guys. Bye.
All right, up next, item right on time, number 11, audit presentation. We're gonna throw this over to Yvette because Steve doesn't know anything about this, right?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Our audit firm, McMahon & Associates, is here this evening to present the 2019 audit. So this is Paul Bacchus from McMahon & Associates and Matt Miller from McMahon & Associates, and I will turn it over to them.
Thanks, Yvette. As she mentioned, my name is Paul Bacchus. I'm a partner with McMahon & Associates, And just a quick introduction, we are kind of a specialty audit firm. We pretty much do all local governments.
As high as I can go.
Can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, you're great.
We pretty much do all local governments. I think right now we do 30 or 40 municipalities, including most of the cast members. And you guys hear from me relatively regularly, but it's important to kind of understand that there's a whole team on your audit. And I'm going to introduce it to Matt, who's one of our managers. And so we try to have kind of one consistent person on the engagement and then one new person on the engagement, and the rest kind of follow according to how the schedule goes. I should just mention that, you know, you have a 145-page document that came with, it's called the CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Glenwood does a CAFR. Most smaller municipalities do general purpose financial statements. So you guys actually take an extra step and disclose additional information in your CAFR. And, you know, I recognize for council, you're probably not really going to absorb a 145-page document, but you want to keep in mind it goes to a lot of different parties. So really, it's going to go to all your bondholders, all the, you know, mutual fund companies that carry municipal bonds, the SEC, the federal government. Your highway user report is in there for highway user funds. The federal government as a condition of receiving state grants, your insurance company, your banking relationships. So those are kind of the heavy users of the report. And maybe if I can just, let me just share my screen really quickly, and I'll just give you a quick overview of how we kind of, or the process we walk through. This is actually your audit software. You can see that my computer screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so audits have kind of, you know, planning, fieldwork, and reporting. I'm just going to kind of run through this really briefly because I know you have a packed agenda. But in planning, it's really about reading your minutes, talking to staff. We meet with each of your departments and we go through and document all your internal controls, whether it's ambulance, building department, cash receipts, IT, journal entries, you know, each of these, the police department, every area that takes money in or money goes out, we want to understand the internal controls over the city, and kind of try and poke holes in the internal controls to make sure that you have kind of best practices in place. Then we go through and compare prior years. We have trend lines on, you know, what we expect sales tax would be, what we expect your utility billings would be, all kinds of different tables, and we look for anything unusual. We read all your minutes throughout the year, maybe watch them on YouTube now. Look through component units like, you know, the DDA, how does that fold into the city, things like that. Once we're done, we kind of we've finished planning our audit, and then we set about verifying numbers. So as an example, this is the cash and investment tab. So each of these is a work paper. And if your financial statements say that you have a CSAFE account with $719,000 in it, we want to verify that you actually had that in the bank. And that was a work paper prepared by Lillian and reviewed by Matt on those dates. And we kind of go down through your financial statements. So we go through all your governmental funds and look at accounts receivable and revenues. You know, did we collect property tax, sales tax, all those revenues that came in, and, you know, utility billings. If somebody is not paying their bill, are we following up on that? Do deposits get deposited timely and coded to the correct account? Same thing with capital assets. We want to make sure that we're tracking all the city's capital assets. We're depreciating it appropriately. We have it on your asset list, and it ties back to your financial statements. If the city's gonna make a payment, obviously it needs to be budgeted, paid timely. Usually, to me, interest and late fees are a sign of kind of a poorly functioning finance department. So we look for things like that. and is stuff recorded correctly? So when you look at your financial statements, or we look at it, we know that a utility bill is a utility bill and payroll expenses, payroll expense, and they're not in the incorrect account. We'll reconcile all your payroll documents back to your payroll policies, back to what was reported to the IRS. Does that all agree to the financial statements? You have promised bondholders when you issued debt that you would abide by certain things, whether it's restricting certain revenues, setting aside reserve funds, or having debt service coverage ratios. So we want to make sure that the city is following through what was promised when that debt was issued. We'll go through equity. We want to make sure you have TABOR reserves, things like that. Expenses, we do some additional work on the landfill fund because of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment requires it. That's kind of another user. We send Carl a letter and say, do we have any legal liabilities? And when we're all done with that, if you look, we actually have 460 different documents that we've scanned in, and that's the basis by which we make our opinion. So it's not just, hey, things look good. There's an entire kind of monstrous process that goes into verifying that the financial statements are correct. And as I mentioned, Matt is on here. Matt, maybe just give a wave. And he's going to actually walk you through. I don't think it's probably beneficial for anybody for us to go into a lot of detail on the numbers because these are December 31st, 2019. And Matt can talk a little bit about this, but first we kind of hit COVID. Second, you guys are right in the middle of a software transition. So that kind of delayed it even more. And then actually getting on your agenda was kind of like trying to get in to see the Pope. So that's how we ended up here now. But Matt can kind of walk you through some of that. Matt, maybe I'll just drive and you can tell me where you want to go on the financial statements. This is the actual CAFR, which is 145 pages. So.
Sure. So your CAFR has quite a few sections, but to kind of start with, you have a letter of transmittal that's actually prepared by your staff. And that's really the first part of the financial statements. And so what it talks about is how your year went and really where you're going. You'll see there, the second part is the GFOA Certificate of Achievement. So that's actually the Government Finance Officers Association. And so by preparing the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, rather than the basic financial statements, you're eligible to submit to them. And they actually send it to another CPA beyond us, and they review and send you an award if they find that your financial statements comply basically with general standards. And then there's a few other items in that introductory section there, such as the organizational chart, and then just a list of elected officials and things like that. The main part of the financial section is the independent auditor's report. So that's what comes from us. You received what's called an unmodified opinion this year, which is a clean opinion. The second section is management's discussion and analysis. And so that's kind of a high level overview of your changes year over year. So how did this year look compared to last year? And then you get into the general financial statements. So you have government-wide, which is kind of a consolidated view and what's referred to as a long-term view. And then you have your fund financial statements. So that's where you'll see all of your individual funds, your general fund, you have your proprietary funds, things like that. And those are on what's called a modified accrual basis, which is more of kind of a current look. So what happened this year and what on your balance sheet is going to happen in the next maybe 60 days or so. And then the next main section would be the notes to your financial statements. That's pretty large. It just gives details to everything that's in the financial statements, more disclosures on your debt, on your pension, things like that. And then you have two other sections that are part of the financial statement or the financial section. That's the required supplementary information. And so these are just budget to actual schedules and then things that are required for your pension. And then you have supplementary information, which are additional budget to actual schedules and other non-major fund items. And then you have a statistical section, and the statistical section covers just various trends. It has information about the city that covers the past 10 years, principal property taxpayers, things like that. And then this year, you kind of, the city goes back and forth as to whether you have what's referred to as a single audit or not. And so the single audit is whether, it just depends on how much federal money you spent throughout the year. And so this year, obviously, was a big year for the city with all of the capital projects and things. So you did spend more than $750,000 of federal money. That's your CAFR. And then we actually issue one other report to you, and that's what's called the board communication letter. And so the board communication letter is essentially our report card to you about how the audit went and if we have any concerns. And so this first section here, the qualitative aspects of accounting policies, this is what's behind your numbers. If you adopted a new accounting policy this year, you would see it listed here. You did not adopt any new accounting policies this year. And then there's three main estimates that are within your financial statements. So the first one is the useful life on your capital assets. And so you do follow standard industry practices there. We obviously go through all of your capital asset additions each year to see what you're adding things at. We're making sure that you're not putting 100-year useful life on carpet, things like that. Your second one is the estimating the allowance for uncollectible receivables. So essentially, this is based on management's experience and kind of past trends. Once things start to be outstanding for, let's say more than 90 days, what is your history of actually collecting those or not? And so the majority of this relates to just your various enterprise funds for the utilities. And then the last main estimate.
Matt, maybe just mention, I think most of that 160 relates to ambulance, right?
I think the bulk of it is maybe on the electric fund, but you have so many different ones. You have electric, there's a broadband, there's water and sewer, you have a landfill, and then you also have the ambulance. So it's coming from a lot of different places.
Okay.
And then the last item there is the pension related liability. And that's actually not something that comes from us. We take the report from the Firemen and Police Pension Association of Colorado, and then we just record it on your books. And so they are responsible for getting the actuarial study annually for you. And so the next section is difficulties encountered in performing the audit. And Paul had kind of touched on this earlier, but you're about, I think, two and a half years into roughly a 4-year software conversion. And 2019 was actually the first year that the city ran all of their general ledger information in your new software. And your new software has a brand new chart of accounts. So every one of your funds, you have over 10 funds, every account is brand new. So it really took a lot of time kind of on both sides before we actually got into your audit. Yvette sent me your new chart of accounts, and that actually gets mapped in our software so that we can compare it to the financials and actually set those up. And then every report that we're getting is brand new. So, you're kind of recreating the wheel when it comes to tying out numbers that we've been doing for a number of years. So that really adds a kind of a complex layer to things. And then obviously there's a learning curve because things are done a little bit different in different softwares. But we do want to give Yvette credit. She really pushed through in September. I know she worked a lot of long hours, a lot of weekends, and we did get this filed before your statutory deadline of September 30th.
And we're auditors, and we don't say anything nice. So the fact that that's in there tells you something.
The next section is about corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So we actually did come up with 3 entries this year that your staff did post. All 3 of them were related to capital assets, and they're all in the enterprise funds. Those are 3 of your enterprise funds there. And I think what this really boiled down to is, again, new software. Your new consultants set you up differently than you have maybe been doing capital assets in the past. So that was a new thing this year. As far as disagreements with management go, we did not have any disagreements with Yvette or anybody else. We are required to tell you that prior to us finalizing this audit, your staff signed the management representation letter, which is essentially the I didn't lie, steal, or cheat letter. it's them acknowledging that they were honest with us when we asked questions. They didn't try to hide anything. And then the next item, Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 87. So this is more of an FYI from us to your staff that coming up, there is a new standard that will affect the city. And so this really relates to leases, whether you're the lessee or the lessor. And it adds kind of more complex rules as far as how you actually have to report those in your financial statements. Right now, a lot of them, as the payments come in, let's say, you just record it as revenue, but going forward, you actually have to put them on your balance sheet. So it's on here as an FYI because the leases tend to come out of the woodwork. People think I don't have that many leases, and then they all of a sudden find out that they have a lot of leases. And it can be a little burdensome to track them down, especially if you executed a lease maybe 8 years ago that's good for 15 years or something like that, because this is a standard that's applied retroactively. So anything that's done in the past that's still in effect now technically falls under this. And then the last section of this letter is recommendations from us. And so the first time that we actually come out and visit the city, it's usually in January or so of each year. And that's when we are really getting an understanding of your internal controls. And we spend a lot of time with a lot of your departments all around the city. And so we have just 2 recommendations for you this year. The first one relates to parking tickets. And so currently, or at least as of January when we were there, all of your parking tickets are paper, and they're generated by by a number of employees within the city. And then they all go to one person or maybe 2 people at the court clerk office. And this is kind of where they diverge into two different tickets, really. So anything that's a Colorado ticket, Colorado license plate ticket, goes into your full court system. And then anything that's an outside Colorado state ticket is just held on to on the side. So it's not entered into any system anywhere. And they hold on to those hoping that maybe they'll get paid at some point, but they don't have a lot of real good ways of following up on those. And I guess our main concern with this would be that we don't like, within internal controls, you try to not have anybody have access to an asset and then all of the underlying reconciliation. And so in this case, there's only one copy of the ticket that's in the city's possession. They have it. And then if a payment did come in, it's also in their possession. And that ticket could disappear and there would be no way to reconcile back to that payment. So the recommendation from us is that I know that you're looking into e-citations. So if you do go into the e-citation program, it would be beneficial if parking tickets could be tacked on to that, because as soon as they generate a parking ticket, it's entered into your computer system already. I mean, alternatively, you enter every ticket into your full court system. And then the second recommendation that we have relates to payroll deduction setup, and then also the related reconciliation to that. Payroll setup is handled through your human resources department. So obviously when somebody gets onboarded or when you are changing benefits, things like that, HR is the one who handles all the paperwork. And what we noticed is when we're on site during that initial time, we actually take a couple paycheck runs, and then we take all of the deductions and things in people's paychecks, and we trace it back to things in their payroll file. So if it's a deduction, we want to see, did they approve this? Is this what the employee wanted deducted? And there was a couple instances where an employee was being charged something different than the actual benefit that they were receiving. So in this case here, they had elected to have coverage for their full family, and they were only being deducted employee only coverage off of their paycheck. And so the best way to actually catch this is to do a reconciliation of what are we deducting from our employees, and then what are we paying, to make sure that you're deducting enough to cover what you should be. And you have had this reconciliation in the past. It just seems that this year, with some staff turnover, that it had fallen through the cracks for a few months. So this is something that Yvette and Finance has taken back over again. So you are doing this starting in 2020 and going forward. But that's all I have for you as far as the board communication letter. I guess at this point, we'll leave it open to what questions you have for us.
What questions do we have? It's a pretty comprehensive presentation. All right. Well, I know, I think this is the third or fourth one of these I've sat through, and I think every time one of the challenges has been, if not put directly in the report, it's been said, is our transition over to the ERP, our new accounting software. So that has been something that I know Yvette and Steve have really spent tons of time and hour struggling with. So Deborah.
I just wanted to make sure I said thank you to Yvette for doing all this work. You did a fantastic job, and I know it was really hard to do. And of course, thank you to our auditing firm for all their work as well.
Counselor Davis.
Well, I as well. I'm glad to see Yvette there tonight. I don't know where Steve's hiding, but I know that, it's been a very challenging year. The amount of work that goes into this just makes my head spin. I'm sure, knowing Yvette like I do, that she does all the heavy lifting in this around the finance department. And so I'm really glad that, to see her tonight, and thank you very much, Yvette. And I guess if you see Steve again sometime, tell him thanks for whatever it is that he did as well.
Thanks, Steve. Charlie, Shelley, and Ingrid.
Yeah, I wouldn't just echo Steve's comments and those of Deborah, but I've worked with Yvette at the Financial Advisory Board now for about 3 years. I'm glad that she's there because it makes up for Steve. Now, they're great people together. I just cannot begin to thank Yvette for the hours that she puts in. I mean, she's there night and day doing things. I've been at many meetings where she's always at our city council meetings. She's in the Finance Advisory Board meetings, always kind of in the background, but we know that she's really doing, as Deborah said, a lot of the heavy lifting, and we can't begin to forget that this finance director we have does an amazing job for us. So I want to have that comment, and if you will entertain a motion, I would move to approve the 2019 audit.
Second.
It's been moved by Charlie, seconded by Steve. Further comments, Shelley, then Ingrid.
I'll echo, I won't repeat what Charlie and Steve said, but I completely agree with it and echo that. And I'd also like to say I'm really thankful and proud of staff that we step it up and do the CAFR level report, even though we all are a smaller city. And I'd like to say thank you to our auditors also for being so thorough. It gives me confidence, and I think that it can give the public confidence that we have gotten such a good report back. And when you see your 2 recommendations and see that level of detail that this audit goes into, it really gives me confidence in the city's finances. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And
I was just going to jump in and honestly echo the same and say that my introduction to all these departments was this week, and I was thoroughly impressed and about just the level of dedication and commitment and accountability. So it's great to see an audit that does look so clean, with just such a small number of recommendations. So thank you, guys.
Councilor Hershey.
I want to thank Steve Boyd personally for the hard work that he does, and Yvette. I would like Yvette and Steve to take a look at that. One of the things the auditors were talking about was citations. When the Glenwood PD moves to that, I think it'd be easier. I know the sheriff's office started doing it. It does really work. So something to look at, and they mentioned it. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. I think one of the things that probably doesn't get mentioned, other than, Yvette, you're just wonderful. You're a blessing to the community, to the city, and to everybody in the finance department, up and down. So thank you. And one of the things I think, Shelley, you mentioned the CAFR. what's important to this city, I think, and what the public may not understand is, yes, it does show that we are taking that extra step, that extra time to be go above and beyond and transparent, but it also serves as kind of a guiding document. I mean, we've bonded a lot of money lately, and to be able to take that document to banks and bonding agencies and be able to go to these places and say, well, look what we do, look how we do it. We get really good, as good a rates as we possibly can because of that tool. So we've bonded for 27th Street. We're going to probably have an update at some point about South Midland and the $13 million that's going to be. So, that extra cost is saved by doing this little of extra work with the CAFR. And I know it is, and it's not a little extra work; it's a lot of extra work. I'm not declining that, but that's the reason. That's one of the reasons we do it as well.
We got an award for it too, Mr. Mayor, or our finance department got an award for that. So we knew that was awarded for last year. So awesome stuff.
It's between the finance department getting these awards and Deborah getting the grants, you almost start to take like these things for granted. Like we are award winning, but of course we are, because we have award winning staff. Why wouldn't we be award winning every year? There is a motion and a second on the floor. Any further comments? Catherine, can you take a roll?
Willman,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Wusso,
Yes.
Stepp,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes.
Davis.
Absolutely.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Thanks, Yvette.
And I would just like to say thanks again to Paul and Matt. They were very patient this year, getting everything switched over because it was tough, and they had to switch everything too. So thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, on to item number 12. This is the approval of the 2021 budget. Ms. Figueroa, you are up.
Okay, well, we already did the fancy presentation and we already had public hearing on it, which I don't believe we got public comment on it. So now I think we're just awaiting if you guys want to approve the budget or not.
I move that we approve the 2021 budget.
I'll second.
Second.
Was that Tony?
Everybody seconded.
Okay. I'll take Paula. I think I heard Paula first. All right. Been moved by myself, seconded by Paula. Further discussion, Councilor Hershey.
I want to thank the city manager and Deborah. Has done a great job with this budget, and it's been very tough times. I want to thank Steve and Yvette for walking me through the process. Unfortunately, I'm not going to support this budget. Instead of spending an hour and a half this afternoon talking about something that I don't think most people care about, we should have been going line by line through this budget. Our employees are not compensated enough. Our infrastructure is neglected. And I still think we have not, street tax or no street tax, we have not spent enough. And when I say streets, I'm talking about all of the infrastructure. There is just not enough in this budget. And I take no pleasure in voting no. I think everyone works really hard. There's nothing they can do at this point. It's not a criticism of anybody who works for the city. It's a criticism of myself and this council for really not doing the hard work to find the money where money needs to be spent, not on frivolous things, not on other things. It needs to be spent on the retention of staff and paying them enough. And I'm not talking about upper management, but just the average worker. And it needs to be spent on infrastructure. And I just don't think going through this budget this week, I've found that there's enough money there. So I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
Okay, well, I believe, I don't know if Carl's on the phone, just to address that concern. I think that if, that you don't feel that we've addressed it, statutorily, we can have a special meeting. We can spend 1 to 3 hours answering any questions anybody doesn't have. We spent the last 2 months addressing this. Carl, what was statutorily, how long do we have before we have to pass this budget?
You need to get it passed, before the end of the year with that question. We usually try to get it done at this meeting or the next meeting at the latest. You've met your requirements underneath the charter as far as presentation of the budget and holding a budget hearing that was properly noticed. But if council would like to set aside a couple of evenings, in the next week to go through it on a line item basis, we certainly can do that.
Okay, and I would be supportive of that. I know that would be really difficult for staff to carve that time out, but if we have somebody that feels that we haven't addressed this over enough times, or there's other questions that need answered, then Tony, I'm more than happy to have special meetings.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I interrupted you. I apologize.
No, that's fine.
I'm not asking you to do that. I think the votes are clear. I know where the votes are clearly here to approve this budget. I can't support it because I don't feel that it's met we could go over it a million times, but there's not a will on this council to do what I want to do. So that's my objection. It's not the end of the world. When Catherine at the end of a vote goes, motion passes unanimously, I don't know that that's always a good thing. It's nice to have a little dissent. Look at what's going on tonight in the United States. We certainly don't agree on a lot of things. So we could have 32 more meetings. I'm not going to agree with the priorities here, but that's not the end of the world. That's just my opinion, and I'm giving it. Thank you.
Okay, Charlie, go ahead.
So I guess my comments are as follows. One, we have gone through this on a budget by budget basis and spent a considerable amount of time on this. Number two is I have taken the time to look at this on almost a line by line basis. And I'm comfortable that we're doing everything we can do to get as much done from an infrastructure standpoint in the city as possible with limited funds, particularly with the decrease in revenue caused by the COVID restrictions that has, in the Grizzly Creek fire, which had significant impacts on our financial picture. I resent the thought that we are not being careful in considering all aspects of the budget when we approve it. So I think that this budget not only is a solid budget, it is doing everything we can do with limited funds. And if we have suggestions as to what should have been changed, it would have been good to do that as we went through each of these individual department and fund balances and say, well, what can we do here and what can we do there? And I sat through every one of those meetings and I didn't hear anything other than a few suggestions, some of which have been adopted, and that's in the memo that Mr. Boyd did for us. For instance, we took money out of the airport budget for a consultant and some things like that. There are various concerns that we had and we brought to the attention of staff and they were addressed. So I think that we've done a very thorough analysis, and I would not be interested in participating in a bunch of meetings to nitpick a budget that our staff has spent a lot of time putting together. And criticizing indirectly staff for doing that is inappropriate. So I disagree strongly with the comments of Councilman Hershey, and I'm going to encourage us to approve this budget tonight.
Paula.
I was going to comment that, I'm still going to comment that this year was so much smoother than last year. I felt like we were kind of up against the wall trying to get things through last year because of delays that we had. And I remember Steve explaining it. I know we were trying to do a strategic plan. I also was graced with the opportunity of being at FAB meetings. So I would get to hear everything twice with Charlie, often with Jonathan as well. So there was a lot of depth and thought put into this by our our FAB group. And I see the work that was put in by each department head. So I would encourage this as well. I had points that I have brought up with staff during our meetings, and they've been addressed as I've brought them up, so I appreciate that. There are always things we can do better. And hopefully next year, Tony will take your advice in hand and look a little bit more deeply, line by line, to see what we can do. But I really feel that we have put a lot of time and effort in this budget, and I encourage it passing it tonight.
Thanks, Paula. Ingrid.
You know, I like I said, I spent the last 3 days with staff, and I felt so confident that they had their own employees, you know, the employees of the city below them in mind and making really good decisions for them. I feel as though what Councilman Hershey mentioned, those are really good priorities as we move forward. And I don't think we should lose sight of them at all. But I do believe after looking through this budget, and I did kind of a, you know, it was a big rush at the last second to try to get caught up. I do feel like there's not, you know, it's been leaned down to accommodate for a really unusual year. But I don't want to lose sight of what Councilman Hershey mentioned, because I think they're completely legit, and I think they service the people of Glenwood, the citizens of Glenwood who work for the city. So I want to make sure that we keep that as a top priority as we move forward.
Thanks, Ingrid. You know, I'll just say we have in the budget, and we have a special meeting on November 10th to potentially award a $13 million street and infrastructure project for South Midland. We spent about $800,000. Just did a ribbon cutting a week and a half ago, I believe, for 22nd Street and the underlying utilities. Over $2 million on Cedar Crest neighborhood that we went into our reserves to do. Did a full mill and overlay from 8th Street to 27th Street on Midland. And that's just the stuff I can remember in the last 3 or 4 months. So I think to say that we're not throwing all that we can at that. And meanwhile, we had a 2-week fire, massive fire, and a global pandemic. And I think the financial position that we've been in, because every year we pass a responsible budget, has allowed us to take a massive 1-2 punch with the COVID virus and the Grizzly Creek fire and come out on the other side, hopefully. We've maintained all of our full-time employees, and while we are not in a position to be able to give employees significant raises this year, we were able to avoid any layoffs of our full-time employees. And as I've mentioned throughout the last 3 months, as we've had presentation after presentation, if anybody would like to suggest where we could find more money for more streets and infrastructure, I am all ears. I think that is a very valid, I will echo Councilwoman Wusso's comments, that's a very valid conversation we continue to need to have. But until somebody brings a specific idea of what department or where else we can take the money from in order to fund another priority, it's all of us just talking about. I mean, I would like to have all of the part-time fitness instructors back. I would like to have a police force that's double. I would like to have higher paid firefighters that risk their life this summer to save our town. But that money has to come from somewhere. And just to say that we don't have our priorities straight, I just haven't heard anybody on this council specify where those priorities need to be reorganized, because that takes some hard decisions and some hard work and some political will. And so in absence of that, it is what it is. Shelley, go ahead.
Just like to say I will be supporting the budget and adoption of our 2021 budget. We have just been through a very difficult year, and I appreciate all the comments that have come before me. We certainly need to continue to seek to compensate all of our hardworking employees as best we can. And we began having that conversation and working on that diligently in 2019, upping the level of money for training and those types of things, and professional development, upping the level of raises. But 2020 has been a tough year, and we've all adapted, but we've worked really hard to show our employees how much they are appreciated and working to keep those full-time employees. And we really appreciate the difficulty it was for employees to take furlough time, for department heads and our administrative staff to take cuts in pay. But we're all in this together. We're all sticking in this together, and we don't really know what 2021 will be like. So I feel like our accounting staff and finance staff has always done an incredible job to be conservative in their budget forecasts. And I feel like 2021 is a conservative budget forecast. I hope it is. And as far as our infrastructure projects, we're moving forward on, as Deborah mentioned earlier, one of the largest, second largest, I guess, infrastructure project, which is going to be difficult for the city, that South Midland reconstruction. But you look at that project, we have 9.9 million budgeted for this year, close to that amount. Almost half of that is grant funding. A little bit less than half of that is grant funding. The bids on that project for the total project are about little over 13 million. Almost 50% of that project will be grants, because we have actively and aggressively pursued grant funding on our projects. The 27th Street Crossing projects, which we'll begin working on, city's contribution to that is $500,000. That's almost a $10 million project estimated. That's a 20 times leverage on our money, thanks to working with partners and going after grant funding. The Lova Trail, again, is a partnership funding. We're getting leverage on that money. And then the water system upgrades, which are necessitated from the Grizzly Creek fire, we're aggressively going after grant funding for that. So there's constant work from administration and finance to leverage our money as much as possible. And I really appreciate that. And I think they're doing a great job on the budget. So I will be supporting the budget for 2021. Thanks.
Okay, looks like we have no more hands up. So we have a motion by myself and a second by Paula. Catherine, please call the question.
Davis,
Was that Davis?
yes.
Yes.
Hershey,
No.
Stepp,
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Russo,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. Thank you, staff, for getting us through this year. Thank you for putting together a very comprehensive and thoughtful budget for 2021 that's reflected our priorities and our goals. And we will move on to planning item number 13, or item number 13, planning item 1520. This is Oasis Creek Subdivision Tract A to allow for the construction of duplexes on lots previously platted for single family homes. This is a continuation of, I believe, the hearing we had 2 weeks ago. We have had the presentation, we've had public comment. Is there additional public comment that's come in that anybody has not had a chance to review?
And Mr. Mayor, is this the one that Ms. Russo is going to recuse herself from?
Yes, it is. And she is saying goodbye right now.
Okay.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Trent Hyatt with Community Development. I just wanted to note that I have not received any additional public comment on this item. So you did not find any in your packet, nor do I have any to present tonight. If we do want to have a further discussion, we're going to want to promote a few folks in the attendees list in case you have any additional comments. Let me know if that's the case.
Okay. Thank you, Trent. I guess, traditionally now we bring it back for council comments and or motion. So would anybody like to make a motion or give comment?
I would make a motion to approve planning item 1520.
Charlie?
I'll second if it's subject to conditions that are set forth in the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Wilman.
I assume that's what you meant, Tony. So
That's what I meant. I'm sorry.
thank you.
All right, been moved. Been moved by Tony, seconded by Charlie. For the conversation. All right, seeing none. Catherine, let's call the question.
Hope,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes.
Stepp,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Willman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Quickest land use comment I've ever experienced. All right, item number 14 on the agenda, planning item number 4420, consideration of a request for special use permit for a retail marijuana establishment in the M1 mixed use corridor district. This is a continuation of the hearing that we had previously. We have opened it for public comment. It is now back to us for further conversation and or a motion. And Ingrid is back with us. Welcome back, Ingrid.
And Mr. Mayor, I'll just point out again that we have not received any additional public comment for this item.
Okay. Would anybody like to care to make a motion?
I'll move to approve planning item 44-20, subject to the staff additions.
Second.
Motion.
All right, it has been moved by Charlie and seconded by, I think, Shelley. I'll give that one to Shelley. Further comment, Ingrid.
So my quick question is, I see comment from the engineering department, but I don't see comment from any other city departments. Am I missing something? Like usually you see fire, police, you see some other agencies commenting. Did no other agencies comment?
Not in this instance.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion by Charlie, seconded by Shelley. Catherine, let's call the question.
Musso,
I'm going to say no.
Cope,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hershey,
No.
Stepp,
Yes.
Godus,
No.
Willman.
No.
Motion failed.
Wouldn't hurt to get a motion to deny with findings.
I'm happy to make it.
Thank
So
you.
in planning item 4420, I'll make a motion to deny based on not meeting the comp plan to encourage diverse economic development. This is yet another application for a very similar type of business that we see regularly. In addition, it doesn't support, in my opinion, a small town character.
Second.
It's been moved by Ingrid, seconded by Tony. Catherine, let's call the question.
Wait, now we're calling the question.
To deny.
To deny.
So a vote affirmative is to deny.
Correct, Carl?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we voted for the passage,
Should vote
we
no.
now have to vote for the denial. Is that correct?
If you
Right.
say
So-
yes or you say no now.
Right.
You can vote either way, Paula, but yeah, you have to reverse your vote.
Okay. Go ahead, Catherine.
Willman,
If there's Mr. Davis has a comment, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I just thought it's worthy of comment that we actually had a long drawn out meeting about multiple meetings about this exact location and this exact business plan. I'm going to say 4 years ago, and it passed. So I feel like, I don't know what I can do. Nothing's changed since then, except the climate. And so that's why I support, approving this applicant. It was a different council then, and that's changed. But the law is exactly the same. The ordinance, the code, the zone, all that is exactly the same as it was then.
Thank you. Charlie?
Yeah, I wasn't on the council at the time, and when it was approved, that as a citizen, I did not think it was a good location for our city to have it at that. I think it was gas and grass or something, but whatever it was, I didn't think it was a good idea, and I did not agree with the council's decision then. So I guess my view hasn't changed, although I'm now in a position to vote on it. So.
Shelley?
Yes, it's my understanding and that this is a relocation of a business also. And the vote is really, do we support the unanimous decision by planning and zoning on approval of the special use permit? So I will be voting to approve it, support that.
So just one more time, if you want this application to go through, you vote no on this.
On
motion.
this, exactly,
Okay,
yes.
just to be clear.
I voted yes on the last one, right.
Okay.
Okay.
Catherine, let's call a question.
Willman,
Charlie?
Yes. Yeah, sorry to get unmuted. Yes.
Russo,
Yes.
Cope,
No.
Godus,
No.
Davis,
No.
Stepp,
No.
Hershey,
Yes.
So I think what we just did was we did not vote to deny. So I guess I would, since I changed my vote, I think I will put forth another motion to approve at this point. I will move to approve planning item 4420 with conditions found in the staff report. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, been moved by myself, seconded by Shelley. Catherine, one more time.
Russo,
No.
Willman,
No.
Cope,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Stepp,
Yes.
Hershey.
No, I thought the mayor was going to change the vote again, and then we could vote one more time.
Motion passes.
You could be here all night.
Yeah, and I apologize. I think just to explain very quickly, it is a relocation of an existing business, and so that spoke to me. Okay, next item. Does anybody need to take a break? It's usually break time right now.
And Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify that in your going back and forth on those motions, your motion was adopting the staff findings and conditions as recommended by the Planning Commission.
That's correct. Sorry, not by as recommended by
I think
staff.
everybody understood that, but I wanted to clarify for the record that was in fact what you were trying to move with.
That was my motion, Shelley. Is that your second? Yeah, that's affirmative.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Mayor, could we take a brief break? I have to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a 10-minute break. We're ahead of the schedule. We deserve it. We earned it. Let's come back here at 8:14. All right, I'm ready whenever. Unless I'm ready whenever. Okay, we're back. Hey, there we go. All right. Do we have quorum? Yes, we do. Good job. All right, we are on to item number 15. This is a presentation about the recommendations from the Parks and Rec Commission on the proposed 106-acre park. Who is up? Go ahead, Deborah.
Okay, good evening. On October 1st, the Aspen Valley Land Trust presented to City Council about a proposal working with the county on a 106-acre park behind Walmart. At that time, City Council directed staff to take the idea to the Parks and Rec Commission, which we did. They gave us a very specific motion, which is the city and county move forward to jointly clean up the current mess on the property, but that the city go back to the county and insist that the county take its responsibility seriously about law enforcement and public safety, and that the county be primarily responsible for property within its jurisdiction. Additionally, the commission encourages the city and county to create a multi-agency task force to study this property and come up with long-term solutions. The city has dedicated $15,000 to the cleanup. We have let the county know that that money is available. And as of right now, we are working with the Bureau of Land Management and the sheriff and city staff for an initial smaller meeting to talk about how we can reduce fire danger and increase cleanup in these areas. Many of these areas are outside the city. So staff does think the multi-agency task force is a good idea. And I think we're coming back really to ask you what you would like us to do next.
Tony, you had your hand up. Did you have a comment? Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I really appreciate Deborah doing this. I know that Paula and some of you have been to that site and seen the mess, but the park's recommendation and what Deborah just said brings up an important point, and maybe she could repeat it. If the county takes their enforcement responsibility serious, I don't want to spend money and clean up this area and start to develop a park, and then we have the same issues again. I mean, I've never seen anything, well, I guess I have in big cities, but not in a place like this, the mess that is created up there, and it could come back very quickly and very easily. It took a long time to create, but if the county is serious about this, then I'm happy to move forward. Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Paula.
So I still strongly believe that I would like the city to be a part of the conversation moving forward. I know that Deborah shared an update from Aaron, I believe, from the AVLT, Aspen Valley Land Trust, that they're continuing to work on this. And the idea of, who would take ownership of this, whether it's the county taking that land or the developers for the Bell Rippey property taking on that land. But I still think we should always be a part of this conversation because it is at our doorstep. And I really appreciate the smaller meeting, Deborah, that you're setting up, considering potential fire in this neighborhood around the park and that type of thing, which could affect the whole city. So I understand not wanting to take on the liability and the financial responsibility on the city's back. And I agree that we don't want that. But what we do want is working together to find a solution. So if our voice is on that task force, I think that's just as important as our voice is on figuring out what to do as a result of the Grizzly Creek fire in Glenwood Canyon and our responsibilities there. We have to be proactive, from my perspective, on what's happening on these hillsides, whether they're off of Doc Holliday's trails or up behind Walmart. We just can't afford to have this continue to happen. So that's, I'm hoping from my perspective, I'd like the city to stay involved in these conversations.
Thanks, Paula. Charlie, then Shelley, then Steve. Go ahead, Charlie.
Very briefly, I echo with Paula's comments 100%. I think we need to stay involved. I did not support the original expenditure of the money because I was concerned that it would just be throwing money down a rat hole because we come back up again. But I do think the task force is a good way to tackle this. It'd be awesome if Bell Rippey developers would take on this property for a number of reasons of which we're all familiar. But I also don't want to lose sight, just to add to Paul's comment, that we have to find some solution to homeless housing, for lack of a better term, whether it's a facility where we manage it like they do at the up in Aspen. I can't think of the location. It's a bus transfer location, but whether we do something like that, I think we have to try to figure out a solution, because if we don't, all we're doing is pushing something from one location to another. So I want us also to maintain our work toward finding a solution to housing for these people, so they don't have to go into the woods and set up camp. Thanks.
Thanks, Charlie. Shelley?
Well, I will agree too with what Charlie and Paula both said. I really do think that the city, like it or not, I would love to have the county take a role in this, and hopefully they will step up with law enforcement and that type of thing. But like it or not, it's right on our doorstep. And so we can't bury our heads in the sand and pretend that it's not there or that it's going to go away. After I toured the property yesterday, Laura Speck was nice enough to give myself and my husband, and then Matt Langhorst was there, and Brian Smith, tour of the property. And it's really clear that this is such a safety hazard and a fire hazard to the city. We cannot continue to just, bury our heads in the sand with respect to these impacts of the homeless camps in this area. It's also a threat to the safety of our citizens and to the environment on the hillside. At the same time, the potential for the property as a recreational trail area is really apparent if you go out there with the trail that exists on the old Glenwood ditch site. So I just ask, as a council, I don't think we want to pass up an incredible opportunity to form a collaborative effort, get the property cleaned up, hopefully in partnership with the county and others, AVLT, possibly Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, improve the safety to the city, but also adding the recreation opportunity in this area of the city that's really lacking in parks and trail access. So I think we have an important opportunity here that I'm excited about, and I feel that we should pursue it enthusiastically. It's worth the investment and the support of staff and dollars from the city to clean this property up, and to activate the area to make sure that it becomes an asset to the community and not this huge liability. And I don't know what the solutions are. I can understand that the city doesn't really want to be an owner of this property. I think that there's an advantage to having a private ownership, and I don't know what that structure will be, but I'd like to see us be part of that conversation. And Jonathan, can I ask if I don't know if any of the public might want to comment on that, but if we have time to do that, if we could take a little bit of.
Absolutely. I have no problem with that. Steve Davis.
I'd like to say that I think this is a really important issue, not one to be ignored. I think the city of Glenwood Springs should be at the table and try to seek a solution I don't want to see us take any kind of a lead chair in this conversation, though. This is private property outside of the city limits of Glenwood. I know we're all greatly affected by it, but still, the fact of the matter is we're putting public dollars into private property that we don't own, and it's not in the city limits. So where do you draw the line? You know, when are you going to come over to my house and clean my yard up? Because it's blighted as well. And so I think we have to be careful as we do venture forward in this, and stay at the table and try to seek a solution. But let's remember where we're at, who we are in this conversation.
Thanks, Steve. Councilor Wusso.
I think Councilor Davis just kind of echoed my sentiment as well. That this is an issue on land that is not our responsibility, but it trickles down into our jurisdiction. With that in mind, to not be part and a voice at a task force, I think would be negligent of us. I think we definitely need to be part of that dialogue. The reason I commented was not to be like, I echo what somebody else said, but to recommend that part of the task force also be a few people from the neighborhood, because that neighborhood was such a great collaborator when it came to fighting the Bell Rippey project, but ultimately having a voice for the neighborhood, that I would just strongly encourage that if we have an ability to add any members to a task force, that we maybe encourage someone from that neighborhood to be our voice, and just make sure that the relationship is there.
Ingrid. And I do believe the recommendation from Parks and Rec did, the last line is, additionally, the commission encourages the city and county to create a multi-agency task force to study this property and come up with a long-term solution. So I think everything that we've heard, again, all the echoing of, like, I think we're all in agreement that this needs to be addressed. But I do believe that the city's role in that recommendation from Parks and Rec is affirmed. And so with that, I will turn it over for public comment. Laura, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello. So I just want to appreciate you for allowing me to join in the conversation tonight. And I'm just feeling really encouraged and hopeful that something positive for our whole community to enjoy can come to fruition. I want to thank Shelley and Tony for taking their time to come and see the area in person and for their insight and guidance. And I also want to thank Paula and Deborah and Brian Smith for their communication with me. We had another park and recreation meeting last night, and we talked a bit more about this project. Obviously, my first and main priority is just to get this area cleaned up once and for all, and in a timely manner. But I also want to add that I just think that this is an incredible opportunity, and one that I really hope the city will want to be involved with in one way or the other. I understand that there are a lot of logistics and questions, but I'd like for you as the city council to perhaps come up with a list of your concerns and questions that either myself, Aspen Valley Land Trust, Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, or any of the other entities that are potentially being involved could answer. I feel that there are still a lot of questions and reservations. And I personally heard that there's actually really positive answers. And I think we're really coming up with an amazing opportunity. So next Friday, November 13th, I'm supposed to meet with the Post Independent. And I'm looking forward to bringing in the community for this discussion, but I also have a little bit of apprehension about, I just really want it to stay positive. That's very important for me. So as I've offered before, if any of you are interested in seeing the area in person, please let me know and I'll make my schedule available. And once again, I just thank you for letting me be a part of the conversation tonight.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate all the work you're doing on this. All right. I will bring it back now for further discussion and/or motion. Charlie.
I want to comment. I want to add what you just said, Mr. Mayor. I think Laura's just done a phenomenal job in keeping this in the forefront and trying to get these solution to these problems. And I really appreciate all of her efforts. I know she's put hours and hours of time in it. I don't know if we need a motion or not, but I certainly, I guess if we need a motion, I would move that we instruct staff to cooperate in being a member of the task force to try to resolve this situation.
I'd second that.
Go ahead, Deborah. Yeah, I think you need a little bit more or different direction.
Well, we can't just say, hey, we're the city and I want a task force. I think it might require someone in council's role to reach out to the county commission. I mean, let me have this meeting with sheriff and, staff and the Bureau of Land Management. But like, if you want a bigger multi-agency task force that includes citizens, that is above my political head. So yes, we're absolutely thrilled to be involved with that and we will participate, but it just won't happen if I want it to happen.
Given Deborah's comments, I withdraw my motion, if my second withdraw, because I think we need to continue to explore it. But I don't know. I did the motion because I thought we needed some action, but I think we've given direction.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I have been part of these discussions, so I would gladly continue taking that role if that's what other council people would like, unless somebody else wants that role.
I would ask that Paula do that, Your Honor, Mr. Mayor. It's her board, and I know she's been at the forefront of this, but if I can help, I'd be happy to, Paula.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the same, Paula. If there's something other that I can do to help, let me know. I have one question though for council and for staff is we put the $15,000 out there and I realize it's private property and we're kind of waiting on the county, but what do you think the status is, Deborah, for actually getting some cleanup, either getting ECOS or somebody up there to at least get started on it this year on cleanup?
It is my understanding, and Erin, her update that I sent to you guys kind of backed that up, is, it's on private land in a different jurisdiction. So, we're waiting for the county to ask us for the money. And I think they're waiting. They don't feel like they can spend county dollars on private land until they own it. So, I think that's kind of it's hard. It is hard to spend public dollars on private land. So it's kind of caught like in a catch-22 situation.
Until we get that ownership cleared up.
Yes.
Okay.
But I am not conflicted on it because I know it's such an important priority to you guys in the community. Like we are ready to have those dollars expended. It's just, I don't think I can take over that.
I just don't want to, I guess my fear here is if we create, I hear task force and I don't want to have death by committee type things sometimes. These things go to committee and 2 years later, you're still waiting for something to happen. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm and opportunity here. And I guess if there's some way we can, especially with groups like AVLT and Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, if we can have something happening as soon as possible, the better.
I would recommend, maybe asking to get on a county commission agenda and talking to them about it. The whole group, not just, one county commissioner.
Right, but going to a county commission meeting. And I think, Paula, I'd be happy to go to a meeting with you if we can get on their agenda.
Should we try to do it as a council commissioner meeting, a joint meeting?
We can certainly put that offer out if that's what council would like us to do.
We could, but with COVID, we might be better off just trying to
That's fine.
show up at one of their meetings.
It might be better that way, Shelley, like if just Paula goes or Paula and myself.
Right.
And I'm suggesting me and you know why.
Okay. That's fine.
I'm happy to go ahead and email Kevin, the county administrator, and ask if we can get on an agenda in December.
Would we rather have them invited to our agenda?
Totally up to you guys.
Maybe we get added to their agenda. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's right. Let's get added to their agenda. That makes more sense. Paula, go ahead.
Deborah, I also think on this task force, so we need a city employee to be in those conversations. So would you figure out who the best person would be to do that, or?
I think we start with me and then we go from there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Steve, go ahead.
Well, I just will close in saying I think I have a hard time imagining that if we leave it up to the government, that it's really going to move along very quickly. It sure seems like it'd be an easier proposition to find another private entity to take on this project, maybe the Bell Rippey people who are right next door to it. Maybe that's part of their little open space program. I don't know, but you guys start talking about between the city and the county and the federal government, and man, that doesn't sound like to me anything's going to happen.
Go ahead, Paula.
I actually agree with you, Steve, and I do think we should keep the core. We should continue this with ABLT, and we should continue it with Laura Speck and neighborhood people. I think some of the suggestions made tonight are important, and that it not just become a county commissioner city task force. It has to be much broader than that to get to fruition and find some results. So from what I understand, there's a possibility of including the developers from Bell Rippey or a representative from them. So I think that already there's a core group of people ready to sit down and talk.
Yeah, and I would say just from the movement that's happened in the last 30 days, from Aston Valley Land Trust becoming engaged, the surprise news that Bell Rippey is at the table even. Those are all like positive steps forward. So let's not lose sight of the fact that things are moving. And again, Laura Speck, thank you. You've opened a lot of folks' eyes to this issue, and just because I didn't go with you doesn't mean I haven't been up there to see it either. So are there any other additional comments before we move on? Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for the comments. And we are up to item number 16. This is a resolution of the City Council of Glen Springs, Colorado, adopting an amended development review fee schedule. Jen.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here to present this proposed amended development review schedule. The Finance Department asked us to take a look at our planning fees earlier this year, and I apologize that it's taken me almost to the end of the year to get this before you. We did find that most of our fees are in line with our neighboring communities, but there were a few fees that we felt like we should add. A disconnection fee, so that's for someone who wants to not be unannexed from the city. An administrative review fee for smaller commercial site plans that are but still in administrative category. Just an addition there in terms of clarifying residential units. Adding a fee for alternative compliance in addition to the administrative adjustment fee. So it's a similar process. We don't have a fee on books today for that. And then adding a fee for some cases where there's an address change or an address assignment for certain types of projects. And with that, I'm open to any questions you might have.
All right, seeing no questions, I'll open it up for public comment. Seeing nobody from the public that would like to comment. Sparse crowd tonight. Golly, we used to have a much better attendance in the start of COVID. I'll bring it back for a motion and/or further comment. Go ahead, Charlie.
Move for the adoption of Resolution 20-36, a resolution of the City Council, City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, adopting an amended development review fee schedule.
I'll second.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Paula. Further discussion, Shelley.
No, I was going to make a motion, so we're good.
Oh, okay. Well, let's call the question. Catherine.
Deb,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Wuso.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Item number 17, ordinance number 24, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, creating the Community Broadband Network Enterprise. Exciting. First reading. Yvette.
Hello again. Good evening.
We can see you twice
This
tonight.
is just some housekeeping items. The budget for next year has the broadband. Broadband has always been living within the electric fund, but now that we are expanding the broadband, it needs to be its own enterprise fund. So before we do the appropriation ordinance in December, we need to have the fund set up and ready to go for an enterprise fund for 2020.
Okay. Questions for Yvette? Ingrid.
After my really awesome tour this week that I keep referencing all night, I have a couple questions. One is, Yvette, are you going to do paper billing on broadband, or will you have the ability to do digital billing?
This will be digital.
Great.
This is a whole different system than what we are currently on. So as much as possible, it will be all paperless as much as we can go.
Okay. And you guys, I mean, I totally trusted your discretion with the budget, but ultimately, do you feel like staffing wise, you guys are set up to accommodate this whole new system?
Yeah, the actual billing system is going to be pretty smooth. People are going to be able to log in. They can change their service. I mean, it's pretty sustainable.
Yeah. And I get it. I know we're actually just creating the enterprise fund and not necessarily getting into the nuts and bolts of this, but I was curious after I visited with you. So thank you. Those were my questions.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Ingrid. Charlie.
Ingrid, just a comment. I think if you look at the budget for the broadband network, we're adding employees too. And so that also helps with the last question you asked.
Yeah. Thank you. I did see that. I just wanted a confirmation that she felt like it was sufficient, that we hadn't been so lean that she felt like it was going to be. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I just didn't know if you were aware of the others. So.
Okay. Further questions? Okay, it's first reading, so it seems like we should probably turn it over to the public for public comment, which is literally our police chief, a reporter, and a Christian Henney. Okay, I will bring it back for Shelley. Do you have a comment, question, or a motion?
I will make a motion that we approve ordinance number 24, series 2020, creating the Community Broadband Network Enterprise Fund.
Second. Been moved by Shelley, seconded by myself. Further comment? Seeing none. Catherine, let's call the question.
Otis,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Wuso,
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Hershey,
No.
Step.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, item number 18, consideration of a planning and zoning commission appointment to fill a vacant seat. Catherine, is this you?
Whose seat is it, Mr. Mayor?
Well, we had talked about, it's a seat that became vacant when Miss Wuso was called up to the big leagues.
I didn't know that. Sorry.
And this is I believe this is an alternate currently. Ben West is serving as an alternate that we are being asked to consider as a regular member. Is this all correct?
Mayor, this is Gretchen. Yes, that is correct. We do have a vacant seat on the P&Z that we need to fill. Ben West currently serves as an alternate, and since his appointment, in February of this year, he has participated in many, many land use decisions and has participated in several of the workshops that we've held. And as you noted, this is to serve Ingrid Busso's vacant seat, and that if you appoint him, his expiration would be February of 2022.
Okay, so we're just looking for a vote on this.
Oh, do you want me to raise my hand? Sorry.
So you just jump in. You're fine.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of Ben West as for a planning and zoning commissioner position until February of 22, I think is what she said.
I'll second that.
Been moved by Ingrid, seconded by Paula. Just make this easy. All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, congratulations, Ben. Congratulations, Ingrid. All right, item number 19, Southbridge update. Terry, this is my favorite
Mr.
topic.
Mayor, can I just one comment? We're an hour ahead of schedule. Should we take an hour recess?
No, Charlie, you need to be quiet now. But Terry, you can speak as long as you would like.
Okay, I am going to keep it pretty short, given the late hour here. Let me try and share my screen. And actually, let me bring up the PowerPoint first. Can you guys see that now?
It's blank. There you go. We got it.
Okay, good. So many of you have seen me give a presentation on this in the past. This is our large project on the south side of the city. Again, it's a really important project for public safety. I'm going to try and scroll to the next slide. Sorry, my PowerPoint's not working like I expected. Let me see if I can scroll to the next slide. Oh, there it is. Okay. So as you've heard me say before, this really is, in my mind, if not the most important project in town, one of the top projects in town. It is a result of the coal seam fire in 2002. I was actually fortunate enough to sit with Carl recently, and he was giving me some of his perspective because he happened to be in town during this fire. But it did force the evacuation of a number of residents on the west side of Glenwood Springs, as well as residents in the 4 mile and the 3 mile corridor. And Carl was telling me that at the time of the evacuations, ash was falling from the sky, and residents were trying to get out of both of those areas. I-70 had been closed in both directions, and State Highway 82 was evacuating towards Independence Pass and was just bumper to bumper. So, those are kind of our worst conditions that can occur when we have to evacuate a large portion of town. And so this project actually is a result of that. And at the time, there was a request to the federal government and through Scott McInnes to award a federal earmark. And they did that in 2005, and in 2007, we began our environmental assessment. I'm very proud to say that we have actually completed our environmental assessment as of December 28th. Yes, it was finally signed. So that is a big step with this project. And now, we will proceed on to our right-of-way. We're moving on to our 60% design review with CDOT here in just a couple of weeks on the 19th. So moving this project quickly along now. Just to show you some of the other slides, I guess we are having kind of an increasing number of fires in the area. For those of you can see, this is the Sunrise Court fire that occurred in August of 2019. We've had 2 different fires in Oak Meadows in the area where I live, both in 2018 and 2020. Everybody's familiar with the Grizzly Creek fire. The fire in South Canyon occurred just this last year, as well as the Red Canyon fire. So I really feel like, we have an increasing, I guess, issue that the community really should be concerned about. So this is the project. Again, it's a Southern Bridge connection. If you guys can see my cursor, this is the 4-mile intersection. We would be adding, essentially rebuilding the road, adding some traffic calming and new connections into the Cardiff Glen neighborhood, as well as the Cardiff Mesa neighborhood. We would be improving, some of our access to the coke ovens, which are down here. And then, going under the airport with the airport tunnel here. We are making a new connection or an improved connection back to our boneyard where Matt's new buildings are, as well as improving the utilities and the roadway, essentially all the way back to Park East over here. From here, we cross the river on a bridge, and then we make a connection into the Holy Cross site, as well as the Jackson Ranch here. This intersection is an on-grade intersection. After many years of discussion with RAFTA, it was agreed that we would have just a stoplight here. It's a full movement intersection. You can go in all directions. It does make a connection into the frontage roads here on the east side of the project. The frontage road will be supported and realigned with a number of retaining walls. Provides access to all the businesses here, as well as these homes that are across from CR 154 right now. So all of these accesses will be channelized to Southbridge. The access to Holy Cross will also be eliminated. So those things will improve the highway safety. We won't have people cutting into the highway at different points. Right now, our section for the project is 2 11-foot lanes. We have a 5-foot landscaping strip, which in our case, I've revised it to be it's a bioswale designed to capture our stormwater. So kind of excited to see some new designs, and new thinking around stormwater management. And then we have 2 8-foot sidewalk and bike lanes on either side. This is just more detail around how the project is designed. I asked the engineering group to highlight the sidewalks as they kind of move through the project. I think that it will be a major pedestrian connection. This is as it moves to the south. You can see that as we continue through the tunnel here, the sidewalks are immediately adjacent to the road through the tunnel. The tunnel right now is not, it is at a 60% design, but we have had a lot of conversations with the airport board and realized that we probably need to improve the radius from the tunnel to Airport Center Road. So the tunnel will change. There'll be a flare off of the tunnel to allow a WB64, one of the longest trucks that is highway legal to actually make that turn. This is the project as it approaches the State Highway 82 intersection. Again, we're carrying the 8-foot sidewalks across the bridge, which is kind of cut off here a little bit here. We continue and we cross the Holy Cross access here, similarly with Jackson Ranch. Because of all of our conversations with Jackson's over time, we didn't add a sidewalk that actually arches back to the Rio Grande Trail here, just because of the additional land that it would need to take. So we cross the road here on an on-grade crossing. And then, it comes up to the intersection. CDOT has agreed to allow us to have a pedestrian cycle on the signal. So then pedestrians can access the Red Mountain system from here and, ride their bikes up Red Mountain. This also comes down on a retaining wall and, accesses the Rio Grande Trail. The Rio Grande Trail itself will come under the new airport road connection in a box culvert. These are some of the highway improvements. Southbridge does widen the highway to some degree, not as much on the north side as, oops, I'm sorry, that is the CR 154 intersection. This is the CR 154 intersection. It's a little bit of a skewed graphic, but what I wanted to point out here is the crossing of the Rio Grande Trail. One of the turns from this intersection is eliminated. So you can come in from State Highway 82 and go back to the north, back towards Glenwood here. You can also come from this intersection and head to the south. You can come off of State Highway 82 and come into CR 154 here. The one movement that you can't do any longer with this design would be then to make a turn to the north. So all of the residents and businesses that come from CR 154 would either have to go back along the road to 27th Street, or they can make a turn to the south and then come back on Southbridge. So again, this is the broader view, the 50 scale of the entire project, but you can see, that we're making some changes with the highway here. There's grading and elimination of the Holy Cross access. And then at this intersection, continuing to grade through. One of the reasons for the highway widening here is a request from CDOT to have 2 turn lanes. So it's hard to see, but those are 2 turn lanes that access the Southbridge project. And they continue through here and then taper to 1 lane, and then would continue back to the north. And this is the end of the project. So this is our current status. As I said, we just completed our NEPA process. Very proud of that. Our 60% design is complete and we're headed toward our review with CDOT. We're anticipating completing the final design in June of 2021, along with our right-of-way. Now that we've completed our NEPA process, we can begin our right-of-way process in earnest. And our current total construction estimate, including construction management and our right-of-way acquisition, is $54.9 million, so $55 million. That does include, new utilities. We've been spending a lot of time with utilities and adding extensions and reconstructions of a lot of different lines, as well as some additional retaining walls in that estimate. So just from a breakout of costs per phase, like we've showed you in the past, Airport Road, CR 163, and Airport Center Road. So roads on the east side of the project are totaling $11.8 million right now. The Holy Cross and the ranch crossing and accesses are $5.5 million. The State Highway 82 work, the widening and the 2 intersections and signals are $17.1 million. There's the tunnel has gone down just a little bit at $5.2 million, and the Roaring Fork River Bridge is still $15.3 million. So these are some of the current funding and places that we're looking to apply for upcoming grants. So as you guys remember, the A&I tax measure had a strong preference for Southbridge in that 20 million of that A&I tax measure has been held in reserve for this project. RAFTA has also allocated 4 million through the Destination 2040 property tax measure. These are some of the upcoming grants that we're looking at. There's a 2020 FEMA, they call it a BRIC grant, Building Resistant Infrastructure in Communities. At this time, we requested 29 million in that, in at least our preliminary application for that grant. We're planning to go and ask the Colorado Department of Transportation for help with this project. We feel like there's a big benefit to the improvements at the intersection. And then Deborah and Jonathan and I are planning on going on Monday to talk to the Garfield County commissioners. At that meeting, we'll ask for a letter of support for our BRIC grant application and ask for also a funding support. And I think that's the end of my presentation. Does the council have any questions?
I wanted to, before you dive into questions for Terry, just focusing on the money for a second. I think one of the questions we had for you guys is, what do you feel like we should ask Garfield County for? My recommendation is kind of like what we did with South Midland and 27th Street Bridge, was we asked for half of whatever we could not get grant funded. Now, it's not what we got, but it seemed like a decent ask for a project that is not within the city. And then also for the Colorado Department of Transportation, I was going to recommend, and we won't, I doubt we will get this, but I was going to recommend that we just make a large ask of CDOT and the state as well. You know, let's shoot for the moon and see where we land. So I was thinking like 20 million for CDOT. It is a $55 million project, and there's no guarantee we're going to get the BRIC grant, even though we will try very hard.
All right, we got some hands up. Paula, then Charlie.
Well, in answer to your question, Deborah, I think that the county should pay as much as Glenwood Springs does. It's on county land, but that being said, that's where I stand on that. My one question, Terry, to you was the no left turn on 154 road. Are the part of the purpose of Southbridge fire, you know, getting people out of town and getting people moving, and is that going to inhibit that kind of flow by leaving that left turn lane out in that area as well? All of a sudden, we're asking people not to leave quickly in certain situations, you know. So I'm just curious. Was that taken into consideration?
You know, Paula, when we were thinking about that turn from CR 154, we were thinking of the cost that it would, I guess, add to the project to add another turn lane. Essentially, CDOT would have forced us to do an acceleration lane there for that that turn, and it was on the order of another $10 million. And you know, we looked at the current use of it, and the current use is low, and we felt like, you know, that because Southbridge will be pretty close to CR 154, that if you really wanted to go back to the north again, it would be a pretty quick turnaround on Southbridge. You know, we didn't think of, you know, I guess the fire aspect of that particular turn, and it's true, you know, to have that much more access would be good. I wonder, you know, it sounded like, at least during the last evacuation of the, you know, the 3 and the 4 mile corridor, and granted, you know, who knows, it sounded like at that particular time with the Colstein fire, I-70 had been shut down, so everybody was moving to the south. But you never know what might happen, you know. I guess the scenarios are different with every fire that we have.
Okay. And then my other elephant in the room, as Charlie said in the last meeting I was with him on, this discussion is what are we going to do if there's a different if we do something with the airport differently than is currently in use. And part of that question is, and I think you've answered this before, but just to have it in this conversation, if we don't do the tunnel, is that going to be a quick, or how expensive of a fix is that going to be to this design plan?
So, we have had those conversations in the past, and I've talked to my consultant about it. In some respects, there's a quick, way to eliminate the tunnel, but, it actually is a little bit more complex because, we not only would we eliminate the tunnel, we'd actually then regrade the road that we've created out there and come from the landing of the bridge on the east side, and we'd regrade up to meet, our existing airport road faster. I think it would probably save us on some utility relocations, both with some of our own working with the gas, and we're talking to CenturyLink right now about fiber optic relocations. So there would be drainage rework, roadway and grading, along with the elimination of the tunnel. So it's and they would redo our 60% cost estimate with the revised 60% plan. So we have thought about it. They did give me a preliminary not to exceed cost for it, if the council wanted to go in a direction.
Okay.
Ingrid.
And honestly, Paula asked the same question that I was going to ask. And so at the risk of sounding naive, I was going to say, what other routes have been explored? And, because of that imperative question of what is the future for the airport? And if we've looked at all these options, is it a possibility that we could reduce costs and use that money for capital improvements on aging infrastructure elsewhere? What would that cost? Just to give us an idea, like if we wanted to explore an option, even though this is obviously a viable route, what would design costs look like to go that direction?
So I did ask them to, and it was a little bit rushed. So they gave me the very conservative, not to exceed number. And what I've got here is, to redo essentially our 60% plan. They've given me an estimate of $74,450. And again, that would be a not to exceed number. And I think, it's a rushed estimate from them. I think we would come in less, but that's what the cost would be to essentially evaluate that, take the tunnel out, and come up with a revised cost estimate for the city.
And remind me, I think you said that the budget, that 5 million or 5.5 that we had received to do the preliminary work, we have used significantly all of that, correct?
No, actually, that's, I guess that's one of the bright spots. We have about $3.5 million left,
Okay.
maybe a little bit more.
Within that, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I, for one, feel like we owe it to our constituents to just know what different alternative routes would be. Granted, nothing like going in day one and shaking it all up. But I do like the idea of understanding alternatives and understanding, from a cost perspective, especially since we've just had, these laborious dialogues over budgets. What are alternatives and what do they look like? I'll just throw that out and see kind of how it sticks with you all.
Thanks, Ingrid. Charlie.
I'm going to kind of follow up with the other questions. And Terry, I don't know if you've ever answered, and I maybe never asked questions directly. If we just do a cut and not a fill at the airport, it would see me from that, just leave out the design part of it. It would seem there'd be a cost savings because you're not having to build basically a bridge underground. Do we have any idea what that cost savings would be? Because that's a consideration that we have to address as part of this airport discussion, what that cost savings would be.
And so You know, immediately you could say that, you know, we would take out the tunnel. And, you know, our current cost for the tunnel is 5.2 million. But, you know, it's not quite as easy as just saying there's just an immediate deduct. You know, we would adjust our retaining walls, or we would grade back into the airport property, and that would be, you know, there's some cost to that, but not nearly, you know, what it is to have a tunnel. I do think that there would be other cost savings to the city that the council may want to consider, and that would be that regrading of the road through both the airport property and Airport Drive as it approaches the tunnel. Because essentially we have to regrade Airport Road for about 1/4 of a mile to drop it down to the elevation of the tunnel. So there's a significant amount of excavation and retaining walls to allow that regrading to occur.
I appreciate that answer. And if you can't give me a number, I understand. But I guess my question is, if we don't tunnel under the airport, what would that section of road cost us? Instead of 5.2 million, what would it cost us? Do you have any idea at all?
You know, I'm sorry, I can't answer anything better than, you know, we would certainly be less. And it would be more than just the 5.2 million, because that's just the structure cost. It would involve, you know, an assessment of the roadway and the grading. And like I said, you know, there's a fair amount of grading to bring the airport road down to the elevation of the tunnel. There would be a cost savings in the retaining walls as well. So I'm sorry, I can't answer it directly.
Charlie, it sounds like you got to pay $74,000 to see the flop.
Sorry.
Okay. I heard that. I didn't want to put Terry in the spot, and hopefully I didn't do that, Terry. I just want to know if you had any idea. I think you generally told me it'll be less, but that's fine. And then I guess I'll just comment on the answer to Deborah's question. I agree with Paula. I think that the county should meet our cost of this. This is as much, if not more, benefit to the county than it is to the city. And I think they need to be willing to equal with the contributions we're making to this project. It's significant. It's certainly a safety thing. I lived up 4 Mile during the Coal Seam Fire. It was evacuated. And so I fully understand, because the other option was to go out Dry Park Road. And in the summer, it's okay, but that isn't an option if there's any rain or anything else up there. So I think we have to continue to move forward the project. I think we have to look at, as Ingrid said, what can we do? What's the alternative? How can we save money? So I would support spending some kind of money to design to get that cost.
Steve Davis. Thanks, Charlie.
Terry, so I got to take you back to the tunnel conversation again. So you say in your budget numbers, the tunnel's $5.2 million. And all I'm looking at is Charlie for some reason. Sorry. Is Terry still here? Oh yeah, there she is.
I'm right here, sorry. I was just trying to figure out where you wanted me to be.
It's hard for me to talk to you if I can't see you. But it sounds like that, you know, if you take the tunnel out, that's not 5.2. Maybe it's 7. Maybe it's 8. There's no way for us to know that unless we spend some sum of money to design it both ways. And are you telling me that sum of money is like $75,000 to find out?
Right.
Because I really need you to be able to tell us, here's what it costs if we build the tunnel, and here's what it costs if we don't build the tunnel. I think we owe it to everybody to have that conversation. And I don't know how to have the conversation about the future of the airport or anything else in that part of town without knowing what that number is. Beyond the tunnel conversation, I also agree that, you know, Garfield County owes half this. It certainly, we're building a bridge that's not even in the city of Glenwood. I mean, here we are again, talking about projects outside of the city limits. Now, John Martin would say, well, that's why you need to annex it in, right? So that it's all yours. But I think everybody that we talk to about partnering in this, we really need to drive home the point that this is not our bridge. This is a bridge we're building for the state and the county, and Glenwood shares some benefit, but it's not in Glenwood. I don't think, many would say that we have no more business building that bridge than we do going anywhere else in Garfield County and building a bridge. There's many of my constituents that don't want this bridge built at all. They are absolutely convinced, and I share some of that sentiment, that building this bridge actually makes Midland into the bypass. So anyway, that's me. I think we have to spend the $75,000. I don't know if you need a motion to do that, and I'd like to hear other comments.
Thanks, Steve. Shelley.
I agree with a lot of what I've heard from everybody else tonight. I do think we spend the $75,000 to find out what that cost is for the tunnel and the roadway grading of Airport Road, because I mean, if I recall right, we just did the whole Cedar Crest neighborhood, and I think the streets portion of that was somewhere in the vicinity of $2.5 million out of the streets fund. And that tells me that, if we're 6 or 7 million to build this tunnel, just for the purposes of keeping that airport runway at this point, that's a big cost decision for this community to weigh, because we could redo a lot of neighborhoods and streets and infrastructure in this town with that kind of money. So it's something that we need to understand well before we make that decision to move forward. So I'm all for spending that money on the design to find out what those costs would be. I also feel like, as far as the CDOT ask, CDOT, this project, if you understand the transportation modeling and such, this project is so important that even though we're rebuilding South Midland this year and next year, South Midland does not function 15, 20 years from now as a 2-lane road if we don't have South Bridge. And neither does 27th Street Bridge, because the traffic forecasts coming down 4 Mile and out of South Glenwood are such that those roads would have difficult level of service trying to function as they are now, especially with everything having to be funneled to 27th Street. So the South Bridge is really important, not just to the city and everything up 4 Mile, everything in South Glenwood, but it's also really important to the choke points along 82 south of 27th Street. And that's very important to CDOT. And so this project is a huge benefit to not only the city and the county and all those residents, but everyone commuting through town, and the function of State Highway 82 south of 27th Street. So cleaning up, all those accesses onto Highway 82 and that strip in there. So that's 17.1 million, I guess I'm looking at, and cleaning up the intersection at County Road 154. Those are really CDOT projects as I see it. So I think our ask from CDOT should be as a minimum 17 million and to 20 million as Deborah suggested. And then I also believe too that we should ask the county to kick in as much as the city is kicking in. So whatever, we can come up with in grants, I think that's a fair ask from the county. So those are my thoughts on it. And congratulations, Terry, on getting the NEPA process done and the EA. And I did have one more question. If we do, yeah, that's a huge, 10, 12 years now?
13 years, yes.
Yes. If we do that other design with the tunnel gone, Does that affect the NEPA approval at all? Or
No, you know, it has been something that I've been afraid of, but you know, now that the NEPA has actually been signed, anything that we change, you know, if we have to adjust the design for, you know, there can be a number of different little things. They call it an amendment. It's I guess CDOT actually had 3 of them done with the Grand Avenue Bridge, and I personally wasn't aware of them. So it's a much smaller process. I think that,
okay.
you know, it's going to be a whole lot easier.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right. I'll just put my 2 cents in because I think this is a good conversation. I spent the morning riding in Eric Strautman's Sirius 22 turbo plane over to Kremlin today and visiting their airport. And I really want to thank him. It's a lovely ride. It's a very nice plane. And I want to thank him very much for taking me up and kind of showing me what another airport is and what it looks like. That's kind of comparable to Glowing Springs. And we talked about this, you know, I mean, this has been, as you know, Charlie has mentioned, it's been a heck of an elephant in the room. And I just, you know, I love them. I said, this is going to be a tough thing for this council or the community or both to really get our arms around unless we know real numbers. And he agreed, you know, and I don't say that he, as a pilot, represents all the pilots out there, but you know, we have to have a conversation in this community about what the value is and what we need to do to create value to the shareholders. You know, I'll put it in corporate terms, but what I mean is the taxpayers are our shareholders, and whatever that is, whether it be the ability to fight fires and get people out of you know, Valley View Hospital to a level 1 trauma, whether it be to create an airport that is, you know, the best general aviation airport in the state of Colorado, if not the Western United States. And that takes, it's going to take more money than just the tunnel. It's going to take some capital investment and some reserves. What does that look like? And what I'm hearing tonight, and I think I'm going to either hear a motion or I'm going to bring one forth that echoes what everybody said. But what I'm hearing is a first step that we've taken to really identify, hey, community, here's options. Here's the options. Now let's have an honest conversation. And then that started tonight, I think. So thank you, everybody. This is obviously one of my projects that I had the most interest in, why I ran for council. And yeah, so with that, Mr. Davis, would you care to make a motion, or would you like to ask a question or comment?
Both, I guess. You know, as we talk about, and we're going to have to save this conversation of the airport for a different night, but I want to make one thing clear to everybody is that even though I'm about to make a motion to pay the $75,000 for the study, in my mind, there will always be the ability to land and fuel helicopters in this community. And that's probably where it's at. Will there always be an opportunity to land and fuel fixed wing aircraft? I don't know. But I would never do anything to eliminate the opportunity for helicopters, because I think it's important for firefighting and for transporting lives in and out of this valley. And with that, I would make a motion to spend the 75. I don't know if you have an exact number on that.
I do. It is. Hold on. Sorry, scanning there.
I could just say not to exceed 75 if that covers it.
It does cover it, but it's 74,450.
Okay, I'll make a motion not to exceed $75,000 for the study to tell us exactly what that's going to cost to build this project with or without that tunnel.
Second.
Thank you, Tony.
Been moved by Steve, seconded by Tony. further conversations? Councilor Wusso.
I would request that you amend your motion and add in language that directs Deborah to request that the Garfield County match whatever we put into it, just to give her some direction as well.
I think that's a separate motion.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I think that 75,000 is going to have to be our 75,000 because at this point, Garfield County is not involved in the design costs at all.
Yes. So let me clarify. I didn't mean design costs. I'm saying let's make a motion to, fund the 75,000 for this alternative design. And then in addition, give Deborah direction that the final budget, whatever portion that we would put in, Garfield County would put in as well. Just so we have.
Yeah, and just not to muddy the water, I think I'd prefer my motion go and get voted on, and then you're certainly welcome to make your motion.
Perfect.
All right, it's been moved by Steve, seconded by Tony. I think I've heard enough in the comments to probably just call. Well, you know what? Let's actually never mind. I will. Catherine, let's call the question.
Willman,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Wusso,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Stepp,
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, and to your point, Councilor Wusso, do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we give Deborah direction to request from Garfield County that they match whatever the city is willing to put in for the final project.
Second.
Been moved by Ingrid, seconded by Steve. Catherine, can you call the question?
Willman,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes. Yes.
Stepp,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Wusso.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Thank you, Council.
Shelley, I see your hand up.
I have one more motion I'd like to make, which I don't know if Deborah needs a motion, but I would make a motion that to direct staff to pursue funding level of approximately, between 17 and 20 million from CDOT for the construction of the intersections for Southbridge, the upgrades to CR 154, and the other improvements along State Highway 82 that are associated with the project.
Second.
It's been moved by Shelley, seconded by Poa. I think I'll just make this easy. All in favor, signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Anything else for the good of the order for this? Terry, do you need more direction?
I hope we didn't leave money laying on the table with CDOT.
No. We
Very good job.
haven't had a chance to bug them yet, so that's our next on our list.
I like how a NEPA with RMI takes like 13 months and a NEPA with us takes 13 years. I think that dichotomy is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. That's enough snarkiness from me. Thank you very much,
Next
Terry.
time we'll do better.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
And Terry, if you don't mind, if you could stop sharing your screen so we could see each other's mugs a little clearer.
Sorry about that.
All right, item number 20, face covering public health order. I believe we have an expired local public health order. Carl, jump in anytime, but I think that this is essentially the only thing that we have that's different from the state is we have a downtown indoor-outdoor face mask covering. And I believe that's been expired now for probably several weeks, if not more, because we have not revisited it. And this is a question, I guess, of do we want to not continue it, but reinstitute it, I guess would be the correct terminology.
Yeah, two things really. One is reinstitute, if you want to reinstitute it, and you can do that with direction to Deborah tonight. I do think that as this, one of the things you need to contemplate is how, I mean, realistically, this is going to go through the spring. I think at this point. I would like to shift away from doing these kind of one-off public health orders and actually bring this back as an ordinance. Just to simplify this, that would be my only request. In addition, is that we just see it as a simple, straightforward ordinance at the next meeting, as well as the order that you would potentially be entering tonight, if that makes sense.
Yes. I didn't know if you're talking to me or just everybody.
Yeah, no, well, you are the chair.
Yeah, okay, well, I guess then yes. So I guess if we wanted to, I guess, reinstitute this, at least the indoor, outdoor, and not wait until an ordinance is before us, would we?
Yeah, just make a motion. If you were inclined to make a motion, it would be to extend the public health order or reinstitute the public health order regarding the downtown face mask requirement on the same terms and conditions as the last one, and then also just giving me direction to bring back an ordinance to formalize that, so you don't have to keep doing this.
Perfect. Councilor Davis.
I just want to make a comment ahead of the motion that, I will not support it because I think that it's, I think we ought to kind of let the governor lead on this health issue at this point in time. And coming from one that actually travels to a lot of communities in this country, it's very, very awkward when every community you walk into has a different set of rules. And I see most of the places that I go to are kind of pulling back and letting their governor be the central officer for those rules. So that's why I'm voting no.
Thank you. Paula.
This might be a question for Deborah, but with all of the things that we're trying to do for outdoor dining and accommodating people, is there a conflict with this of you have to wear a face mask, but you have to stand outside and eat and drink your dinner? And I'm just trying to figure out how this works.
I think if council wants to move forward and reinstitute it, it will be treated the same in that, when you sit down to eat, you take your face covering off. But yeah, outdoor dining in the winter is going to be complicated and messy and cold. So there's no perfect solution.
Charlie.
My concern about this is the same thing. The reason I didn't support this when we first passed it is it's how do we enforce this? I'm downtown a lot, and I certainly wear my face mask around to be in compliance with the city code. Would probably wear it even if it isn't there, but there are so many people that don't, and I don't think our police force has the ability to go and stop and stand at the corners and do that. I understand in Aspen they have officers actually do that. If you're not wearing it, they approach you and tell you to put the face mask on. And I don't want to pass something that we're not really going to effectively enforce, because I just don't think it's a good way to pass laws that are unenforceable with our ability to pay for that kind of enforcement mechanism. And no criticism of Citadel, and I was down one occasion and saw them out there, and I've not seen them out there since then. I don't know when we stopped doing that, but I guess I tend to agree with Steve. I think the governor's got orders out there. I don't think that it's enforceable. I think it's confusing to our tourism industry, and I'm totally in favor of wearing a face mask as often as possible. I'm certainly one of those challenge categories being an old guy. So I try to be real careful about this stuff. And I'm not a believer that this is an infringement on your free rights, but I do think it's important that we have something we can enforce.
Councilor Wusso.
So once again, kind of trying to play catch up in the event that we didn't extend this, would the governor's orders take precedent then?
Yeah, and so really what we were doing is the governor's orders, the current public health orders, and also the counties, either one of those, kind of formed the base. And then we had, the council had adopted a downtown, in the downtown area, inside, outside, particularly this summer when it was so crowded downtown. So it was a layer, it was on top of those other two, but not in conflict with. Because we actually can't supersede the governor's orders or the county public health order, but we can add to it. We can't take away from it.
So it was just, yeah, and I understand the area and everything. I just wanted to clarify that in the event that we didn't extend, it would be the governors and the counties then that would super.
Yeah, it would still be, and I mean, you're seeing a couple of different things going on right now. Obviously, the governor has, over the last couple of days, issued sort of sterner and sterner, like, we've got to get this under control in terms of where our numbers are starting to peak at. The other one you're starting to see is, I think, ski towns in particular are all of a sudden getting really aggressive on this issue. I think Vail just adopted one, Beaver Creek, which is kind of a weird sort of metro-y district area, looking at the same thing. Aspen obviously has one, Snowmass Village does, I believe. So I think you're kind of seeing it too, where it is impacting a particular industry. It's, I think everybody's trying to figure out what the right path forward is this winter.
And have you seen one that seems less contentious, or do you feel like ours is pretty on par with?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's most of these areas, they're just designating particular areas in their downtown cores or in their very busy outside spaces. I think that's one, the lifts in Aspen are both in the downtown core as well as in really busy outdoor spaces. I think you're going to see something, I mean, I think that's part of what Vail just did too. I haven't looked at it in a great deal of detail, but it's trying to protect those areas and frankly make people feel as comfortable as possible from a cross section. But as far as controversy goes, no, everybody, I mean, this is one of those wedge issues, right? Everybody has a strong opinion for a variety of reasons. And so there has not been consensus in any of the communities in general. I do think, like over in Summit County, where they have struggled more, they were early adopters of a lot of regulation. It's pretty well accepted over there because it's been that way since March.
So I lean a little more towards Charlie and Steve, but ultimately my one rationale that would make it so that I could continue to support the extension is that I do feel like the barriers possibly protect or at least diminish maybe some confrontation with business owners, because if somebody is, they get out of their car, they're in this zone, they see the signs, they put on the mask, then hopefully by the time they're walking into the business, it's already on and there's not that confrontation. So that would just be my thoughts.
Thanks, Ingrid. Deborah.
Just to address some of the enforcement concerns, or not address them, we absolutely cannot enforce this. It's a matter of whether council wants 3/4. When I go down there, I would say 3/4 of people are honoring it and 1/4 are not. So is it worth it to get the 3/4 of people listening to it? Because if you guys tell us you don't want to do it, that is fine. We're going to take down the signs telling people they have to do it, and that 3/4 will drop. That, and the other thing to consider, and I'm going to get into this in our next item, is, Summit County, I believe today or yesterday, went into Safer at Home level 3, and they instituted a 10 p.m. curfew for the county. So, I mean, that is a real reality that we are looking at. It has happened to us, but everyone has gotten used to living with COVID, but something is changing now. And I'm not saying the outdoor face mask is a way to deal with it or not, but just take that all into consideration as you're making your decision.
Sorry, I had a neighbor just pop in my window, like literally pop in my window right here. So I missed that. Shelley, your turn.
Thanks for everybody's comments. I know it's a tough issue, but I feel like we are going into winter. Numbers are spiking everywhere. They're spiking in our county. They're spiking all over the resort towns. And if we want to keep, hopefully, our tourist attractions open through the winter, we want to have more semi events downtown, but hopefully have people at our restaurants downtown and milling about under the bridge. It's nice to have that zone, because even when I go down there and I see those signs, it's a reminder, hey, I'm outside, but yeah, I should still put my mask on. And I totally agree with Deborah. We may not be able to enforce it real strictly, and we don't necessarily want to come down on people with a hammer, but if we get 75 to 85% of the people that are down there that see that reminder and go ahead and put their mask on, and we can help cut the spread, I think it's worth it. We're keeping people safer. And frankly, when I hear from business owners and a lot of my constituents in town, all I've heard from the locals that I know are thank yous for doing as best we can as a council to keep our community safe. I haven't heard anybody give me a hard time frankly, about the mask ordinance. It's mainly thank you for doing all you can to remind people, especially our visitors to town, that just take precautions. So I'll vote for. I'd like to see us extend this and keep it at least through the winter, and hopefully we can keep from going to stricter restrictions.
Yeah, and I'll just give a couple comments and then I'll give you another bite at the apple, Steve, if you have another last parting comment. But I think we were one of the first cities in Colorado, certainly Colorado, possibly in the nation, to do a face mask order. And I don't think doing a face mask order in downtown is something, especially going into winter when we're not packed like sardines down there, that it will move the needle of the people outside transmitting it, which was probably more of my concern when we did the inside outside in the summer, because it was really packed in the Bethel Plaza for sure. Because you're not be able mostly to maintain 6 feet of social distance at that point. But I do think, to Ingrid's point, you do get out of your car, you just put it on right away, and it is a reminder. And it does, I think, the pro-business message of not having to have my friend and neighbor Aaron and John Zielinski have to confront somebody because they're already walking in with a face covering on. And I hate virtual signaling and not having something be enforceable. But if, in 2 hours at 11:45, if I go drive my car on Highway 82, 70% of the people are going to be some form of inebriated. We do have laws that are by and large not able to be enforced, but they do engender compliance. And we did see that when we put the face mask order on that first meeting in April, that the usage went through the roof. So I guess that's a long way of saying that, one of the things that I have seen as people have gotten more comfortable being together and being around people in restaurants, in bars and clubs and house parties. Used to all summer, it's like, oh, just have a couple families over, let's sit on the deck, social distance, around a fire pit. And now we're not able to do that, but people are still hanging out because it's just things that we do. We're seeing record cases all over the place, and I'm not seeing as much of compliance at places like Walmart and other businesses. So I think going backwards on some of this is not where I want to be right now going into the cold season. Will it help? Maybe, but it's just not something I want to. I feel strongly about repealing some public health orders right now. Councilor Davis.
Just the last thing I was going to say, as a result of a couple of comments about people wearing masks, getting out of their car, and therefore they do in the store. I'm a downtown business owner. We never, ever have anybody walk into the store without a mask on. I mean, it just, that was initially that people were kind of slow on the uptake, but as now everybody gets it. I mean, it's just like, putting your hat on and off, I guess. You walk in, you put a mask on. I don't think we need a law in place to make me do that. And I personally, I'd leave the signs up regardless of which way we go. I don't think we need an ordinance in place to keep those signs up. I just don't think we need an ordinance that we're not going to enforce anyway. I just hate more laws, for no good reason, because you're not going to do a damn thing about it anyway. People are going to do what people do, with or without it.
Okay. With that, let's call the question. Catherine.
Do we have a motion?
There's no motion.
Would somebody care to make a motion?
I could.
Hey, Carl, thanks for the legalese. Thanks for being all lawyery with us.
I just trying to get us home.
Does somebody have a motion? Sorry. I'll make a motion. I will move that we reinstitute our previous face covering indoor-outdoor downtown public health order until such a time that we can bring back an ordinance for formal adoption and consideration.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further conversation? Catherine, let's now. Oh, Charlie, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm going to concede that I have listened and I have changed my mind. I'm going to support the motion.
Oh, come on.
Good word. You know what? You've just inspired me to go on Facebook and get into arguments now, because now I think I can win one. All right, Catherine, let's call the question.
Hope,
Yes.
Wusso,
Yes.
Davis,
No.
Stepp,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
Godis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Lively conversation. Item number 21. We're almost back caught up, unfortunately. CARES Act funding. Is this Deborah?
It is. I wanted to give you guys a quick update. Included in your packet was $180,000 of CARES Act funding and how the Aspen Community Foundation intended to spend it by the end of the year. So $40,000 to lift up, $20,000 to Alpine Legal Services, $24,000 to Catholic Charities, $24,000 to the Family Resource Center at the Roaring Fork Schools. I Will Kill This, $24,000 to La Medici, $24,000 to the Landlord Tenant Relief Fund, and $24,000 to Valley Settlement. So that was kind of indirect. You guys asked us to divide the funding up kind of between the general fund and the community. And that is what Aspen Community Foundation went ahead and is planning on spending the money on. For the addition, you then asked us to come back for the final third of the money, which it didn't quite divide up that way. I was gonna try to make a suggestion that, we do half of it into the general fund and half of it back out to the community, and where we are with our COVID numbers and where I'm worried we might go with closing, reducing capacity at restaurants. I am gonna make a recommendation that we put it all back into the community and not into the general fund, because as of right now, The general fund is just 9% down, which in any other year would be god awful, but it is not god awful for 2020. And I'm very worried about our residents, and I'm very worried about our businesses. So, we are recommending for the $240,000 that is left, that $50,000 go to our winter dining capacity increases, such as I believe we have purchased, yet they have not arrived 6 igloos for outdoor dining, for expenses like that, for more heaters, to continue to spend, finish out our listening sessions. We're planning one, I think, for December. And then either a combination, there's about $177,000 then left that it either go towards business grants or we work with local foundations to get that money out into the community.
Paula.
Thank you for providing this information, Deborah. Is there either in the ACF breakout, and because I don't know some of these organizations, but is there any money that has been set aside to help us with the homeless through the winter months?
No, I believe this is mainly going to financial assistance for households that are having trouble paying their rent and or food. This is not going to, it has not gone to help our homeless population, because there really isn't anything set up to do that.
I guess I'm just thinking if somebody was, evicted because of COVID, because they lost jobs, hotel rooms or that type of stuff that might help people on a emergency situation, not so much where we're setting up a homeless camp or that type of thing. Although that would be great to do, to set up a homeless area. But I'm just kind of thinking some kind of contingency to help these people who could get caught.
I think the majority of that money is actually going to try to keep people in their homes and keep them fed. I mean, that is, I think, the majority of what the Aspen Community Foundation is trying to do. They just spread it out over multiple organizations to try to help different pockets of the community. So yeah, I mean, I have reached out to the Aspen Community Foundation again to see if they need any additional money, if they could spend it by the end of the year. And quite honestly, they have not gotten back to me. So, and I think they didn't, like, we offered up 240,000 and they just asked for 180. So I think we'll have to be, the easiest thing would be business assistance in order to ensure that the money gets spent. But I think there's also something to be said for, I've reached out to Lift Up, and they're going to get back to me to see if they think they need any more money before the end of the year. So I do think there is still value in trying to split between business help and help for the community, if I can guarantee the money can be spent by the end of the year. And that's only because it's a requirement of the funding.
Right, I understand that. Everybody keeps cutting out on me tonight. So I get these very slow responses. I don't know if other people are having this.
I had it with Terry and Deborah quite a bit.
Okay.
We just need new broadband soon, Matt Langhorst. Go ahead, Shelley.
I'm getting a little bit of that too, Paula, just a little bit of cutting out. Deborah, I really appreciate you bringing this back to us, and I love the idea of putting that extra 240 back into the community, because I just think that's the right thing to do with the money. So I really appreciate you bringing that back. I do share some of the concerns with Paula for the homeless population, or, frankly, anyone else who's really low income and maybe doesn't have the ability. We talked about this earlier, people who don't have the ability to isolate, if they have a family member with COVID, or if they have COVID. I understand we've got there's the federal sick leave now. If you're diagnosed or you're exposed to COVID, you can get, I think it's 14 days of sick leave paid. But just the physical ability to isolate if you're in a crowded household might be difficult. So I don't know if the county has come up with an idea on that at all as far as putting people up in hotels or anything like that. I know we discussed that a little earlier, but maybe that could be some of that additional community assistance money could go towards some of that if needed. So, but I like this idea in general, and I'm fine kind of giving you discretion on working with these organizations. And, you know, with what I've seen so far, as far as grants getting out to the community, I have confidence that staff and the other groups working on this will do a good job. So thank you.
Thanks, Charlie and Steve.
Yeah, I had a meeting today with Jennifer Weary, who is the executive director of Alpine Legal Services, for something else. And we got into this discussion. One of the things, the comments she made to me is that a lot of people are paying their rent, but they're not able to pay their credit cards or not able to pay other bills. So they're deferring their money into rent. And Alpine Legal is looking at, along with other people that Jennifer is working with, some kind of a program to try to deal with some of these issues that are caused by COVID and just the general pressure on low-income people right now. So I just kind of want to address that since you raised this housing issue. Companies did that. And Deborah, I agree. I think this is where we put the money, put it into the community, and I trust the staff to come up with the right place to do it. Do you need a motion from us to do that?
I think so. If you guys would make a motion to at least give me the authority to distribute the rest of the funding, I would appreciate it.
I move to approve Deborah's recommendation as set out in the attachment to the agenda item, CARES reimbursement update, October 31, 20, and give staff authority to spend the money in that fashion.
Is there a second?
A second.
Moved by Charlie, seconded by Shelley. Further discussion? Steve, do you have further discussion?
Well, yeah, you said Charlie and then Steve, and
I meant Shelley. Did I say Steve?
You're not going to let me talk about it?
You can talk about it.
Can I? Okay. I just want to say, and I agree with the motion, but the sector of the businesses in Glenwood that I'm most concerned about are the restaurants in town. These are the guys that are really suffering. And I don't know that the rest of the retail world really is. We very much appreciate the grant cycle that came through last time that kind of helped everybody get over the beyond the closing that we all endured. But now that we're all open, those that are really impacted are those that are restricted the most are the restaurants in town. So I think I would appreciate seeing those grants going in that direction. That's my comment.
All right, any other comments? Tony? No, okay. Sorry, saw a hand. Okay. Steve, I agree
Do
with
we
that.
want to amend the motion? Does Charlie want to amend that to give that direction, or? What, are
That's
you
fine with me.
asking that, Steve?
I mean, yeah, I wasn't asking for that. I was kind of relying on staff, and I guess my comments were more of a direction to staff. But if you want, if everybody agrees and you want to amend that motion, I just would not want to see us take what limited funds we have to help prop up businesses in town and prop up those that don't really need it as direly as the restaurant industry does at this point in time. And the restaurant businesses are going to get really, really toughly impacted over the next 4 months.
I agree with your observation, Steve. I don't know if we needed the motion, but I certainly think that would be the direction I do as staff. In some recent financial statements, I asked for some trends over the year to date on the restaurant and the lodging industry, because those in the recent sales tax reports show those are the ones still being hit hard. And they were down 10% in September, which I thought we were fairly busy. So I certainly think that should be a place, without being more specific in the motion, it ought to be a place where staff ought to be looking. And I still like to leave it up to Deborah and staff to have that discretion, but I certainly support what Steve is saying.
And I would say if you want us to target a specific industry, I totally understand where you're coming from, but go ahead and put that in the motion, just so I have some cover to do that.
Okay, I would ask that Charlie amend his motion.
In that case, given Deborah's comment, I will.
Suggest that it be focused on restaurants, and maybe that leaves a little flexibility. Would that work, Deborah?
Yes.
That would be the way I would frame my motion, and focused on the restaurant industry.
And can I just say one more thing to all of you? I mean, I guess there's just a question in my mind because, is that the restaurants and bars as well? I mean, is it like Casey's Brewing, which is really not a restaurant, but they're as impacted by this as any other restaurant is?
Steve, I think at least the statewide definition considers Casey's a restaurant. They don't consider it a full-on bar because they do have a relationship with a food provider.
Okay.
So if we look at just the, the yellow, red, whatever, I don't believe we have in Glenwood any true, by the state definition, bars by the state definition.
All right. Thanks. I just didn't want to exclude somebody there. So
yeah,
I would second Charlie's amended motion.
Okay. So we have an amended motion by Charlie, amended second by Shelley. I will also say I really appreciate you saying about the restaurants. I think we're going to probably be in the orange. The state will move the county to that very soon. And when that happens, the capacity level for restaurants, which is essentially all of them, goes down to 25%. And 25% with the size of most of our restaurants in town, it's a killer. So, Kevin, let's call the question.
Hershey?
Yes.
Step?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Godus?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Wusso?
Yes.
Willman?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you.
All right, we're 2 minutes behind. Let's make this quick. City manager, boards and commissions.
Okay, and I think we'll have a longer conversation about boards and commissions, but I wanted to get your approval. We've been very much struggling to get some interviews set up. So we wanted to ask you guys if it was okay to plan to do interviews for open positions at the time of the board and commission, and then you guys could work with your liaison on whether you wanted the board there or not to be part of those interviews. But we're looking for a way to streamline the process to make it easier so the city clerk is not chasing you guys around continuously to try to set up interview times.
I'm supportive of that. Looks like we have general consent. There we go, Ingrid.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that as well. I would like to have notice on those interview times so that we had the opportunity if we wanted to take it.
Absolutely. I think my idea is that the board liaison will work with the board and board liaisons to set up those interview times. So you still have a say on what day it will happen within your normally scheduled meeting times. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just wonder if it's a board I'm not on, like if we're interviewing for P&Z, will I still get the opportunity to sit in on that? Will I even know it's happening? I've always been that person that always was the advocate to have this interview process, and I don't want to lose that opportunity. It disturbs me when we have people on boards and commissions and I have absolutely not a clue who these people are. I'm not saying Catherine needs to chase me down, but I'd like to be in that email loop or something so I can get there if I want to.
I agree with Steve. I think, and it should not increase the burden to staff.
It would not be, but as long as we can do it during the time when the regular meeting takes place, I think we could invite you all if you all want to be invited to all of them, because they're all advertised for you all to attend to make it simpler.
I think that's fine. Just send out a blanket email to everybody, but maybe in the email just to remind us who actually is the liaison who has to be there to conduct the interview. But then if anybody else wants to jump on because they have a specific interest in that, then I think that's helpful. And I would go so far, Steve, to even say that P&Z is something that the one board we probably still should all jointly interview the applicant. We get enough development applications that it's good to know who that person is and put a face to the minutes we get.
You guys had given us direction previously that planning and zoning, the DDA, and tourism all should be interviewed by you as the board. So I think that's what we're planning on doing. But like at a council meeting, so we didn't have to chase you down.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, you don't have to chase me down. Just keep me in the loop.
Okay, looks like we have overwhelming support. Let's do it.
Okay. That's it. I'm done.
City Attorney. Fantastic. No correspondence incoming or outgoing. We are 1 minute behind time. I'm so sorry, Ingrid. I was going to finish early for you tonight. All right.
We'll see each other again Wednesday evening. Is that correct?
Tuesday
evening.
Yeah, Tuesday the 10th to potentially award a South Midland bid contract.
Will we know who the president is by then?
No.
Just checking.
All right. Anything else good for the order?
No.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you back here Tuesday.